I have to sneeze. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council public meeting for Tuesday, June the 20th at 7:30. We do have a number of people live and in person tonight, so everybody welcome. And I suspect that we also probably have a number of people watching online. But we'll get started. I think we have a fairly jammed agenda this evening. So I would ask everybody that's speaking, including us here on council, of course, to make sure that we stick strictly to that 5-minute time frame that we have available to us. I want to just be clear, the purpose of a council public meeting tonight and any night is to hear comments back from the public and from stakeholders and from us on council here about any given development application. So tonight is a somewhat different evening in that it's not a specific development application that we're dealing with, but amendments to the official plan. So all of that is going to happen this evening. There will be no final decisions that will be made tonight, with the exception of the motion that will be moved by a member of council will be to refer all the comments back to staff as they continue to go through the analysis in the process to get the official plan passed and in force and effect. So tonight is really just about hearing from the public and council, and all your comments are valid. So we certainly invite that. And again, I want to thank everybody in advance for being here tonight to do that. We also should mention that we have quite a bit of correspondence that has been written for each of the different items that we have on the agenda tonight. So without further ado, I have to read some special magical words that we have to say under the Planning Act. And I haven't committed them to memory. Thank you. Okay, the special magical words are: if a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the city of Richmond Hill in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of city council to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So with that being said, I'm looking at this point for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Davidson, Councillor Tree, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof, members of council? Seeing none. Okay, scheduled business. So we have a number of items. I think there's 4 tonight. And the way this will work was we'll have a presentation by the planner on the file, and then we will open it up after that to comments from the public. So the first item on the agenda is OP 18.5, which is the Yonge and Carville 16th Avenue Key Development Area. And the presenter tonight is Chun Chu, who is our Senior Planner Policy. Welcome, Ms. Chu.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I will present an overview of the draft OPA 18.5 regarding the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue Key Development Area. I'll be using the acronym KDA. Next slide, please. The intent of OPA 18.5 is to plan for the KDA over the long term and to conform with regional and provincial policies regarding land use planning near transit corridors. The draft OPA proposes a vision for this KDA, and it includes detailed land use policies and schedules, which together satisfies the city's OP requirements for secondary plans. Next slide, please. To recap, the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue Key Development Area is the second densest location in the city according to our city structure and the intensification hierarchy. This means the KDA will accommodate intensification at a scale less than the Richmond Hill Center, but greater than the other local centers that are being considered by council this evening. The vision for this KDA is a community that is walkable, sustainable, green and vibrant, with a people-friendly and shopping focus. Next slide, please. The KDA overlaps with 3 protected major transit station areas due to the bus rapid transit stations located in this center. The province and the region require local municipalities to direct growth to transit corridors and to intensify near transit stations. Minimum densities must be achieved in order to support ridership. Accordingly, the draft OPA provides permitted use and built form policies that help achieve the minimum density target over the long term. At full build out, which is about 30 years or more in the future, the KDA is expected to accommodate 23,000 people and 8,600 jobs. This translates to a density of 640 residents and jobs per hectare. Next slide, please. Draft OPA 18.5 carries forward the permitted uses in the current official plan for this KDA. And so the land uses identified on this slide continues to apply in this area. However, the draft OPA will strengthen the requirement for retail, commercial, and community uses in order to support a balance of residents and jobs. Therefore, the draft OPA will require the KDA to retain and expand the existing amount of non-residential gross floor area in this area. Next slide, please. Draft OPA 18.5 proposes densities that range from 2 to 8.77 floor space index. This essentially measures the maximum amount of gross floor area on any site, which then is translated into a building's massing. The 3D model on the right-hand side shows conceptually how the building masses might look like. Most of the built form is high rises, and the building heights range from 3 to 55 stories, with the tallest buildings centered at the intersection of Yonge Street and Carville or 16th Avenue. As you move away from the intersection, the height and density decreases and they transition to low rises and townhouses where the edge of the KDA abuts a low density neighborhood. The maximum height of any tower is based on the allotted FSI and the application of the 45-degree angular plane if the building abuts a low density development in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. OPA 18.5 have policies that enhance the public realm by connecting new streets and cycling facilities across the 4 quadrants. Active transportation connections are also proposed through the implementation of new trails as well as parks and open space. Among other features in this KDA, the draft OPA will create a market promenade in the northern quadrants. A gateway will also be featured at the intersection of Yonge Street and Carville or 16th Avenue. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, following this council public meeting, staff will provide opportunities for meetings with stakeholders. Over the summer, staff will analyze the feedback and make any modifications to the draft policies as needed. Then the OPA will be finalized and brought to council for adoption in the fall. Next slide, please. And this brings us to the end of the presentation and the recommendation that this presentation and staff report be received and that all comments be referred back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point in time, as I said earlier, we have 4 pieces of correspondence, but we have also 4 people that have registered as delegations. What I'll do is we'll go through them first, and then after that, we will open it up to the floor to see if there's anybody else here in chambers that would like to speak. So the first person that we have registered, I think, is virtual. There he is, Mike Gursky. Go ahead, Mr. Gursky. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Good evening. First, thank you to council and staff for providing a number of opportunities to provide comments in the planning cycle for these amendments. I would like to elaborate on a few ideas that I do not see addressed yet. I think it's time to see developers provide award-winning detailed designs, not just for individual buildings, but for all the land they own and plan to develop. So what makes an award-winning design? Well, first off, there needs to be mixed use. This is measured by the activities on the sidewalks and these various planning zones. Street activity needs to continue throughout the day, evening, and night. This means that streets are not only a corridor for the passerby. The buildings should not turn their back on the street, and each block needs to have activity anchors, dance studios, theaters, cultural venues, etc., that support cafes and specialty stores and grocery stores. The streetscapes need benches, tables, ping pong and chess, trees, etc. This, of course, means that the sidewalks and the greenery on the street level are wide enough to accommodate all this activity. It cannot be stressed enough that cultural entertainment centers must be part of this mixed use. The streets themselves need to be short, offering pedestrian opportunities to follow different paths, and at the same time creating more places for commerce on street corners and for encountering fellow neighbors. In all of the plan amendments, there is ample opportunity to create shorter and more streets, or even better, some pedestrian-only streets. Long blocks create isolation, not community. The next idea is a challenge, but the age of the buildings need to vary. All new homogeneous architecture creates uniform facades that typically are not open to the street. It is like the street plays only one note. This is especially true for residential condominiums, which provide no interaction with the street unless various other commercial activities are on the main floors and invite neighbors to be part of what can be referred to as the ballet of the street. A word about trees. The city should require that any development plan submitted to council should identify the tree species that will be planted on a site and the rationale why. This simple requirement will have knock-on effects in terms of the thought and design effort that developers need to put into what the streetscape will look like and how it will function as part of a neighborhood. The vocabulary around pedestrian and cycling traffic, I find, is a bit sparse. Vibrant communities are built on pedestrian usability and attraction. Subway and above-ground transit are a method to remove residents from each of these planned developments for periods of a time. A shift in thinking needs to take place here. Optimally, a large minority of people should work in their neighborhoods and walk to their jobs. A word about parks. A person in any plan amendment area should be no more than 10 minutes from a park, a fountain, or with benches, or a play area with kids. 15 minutes is too long. Finally, a word about community space. In the long forgotten past, developers had to turn over a portion of their development lands for community space. This was rescinded to allow developers to pay cash in lieu of space. In all these development areas, award-worthy designs would need to have developers resort back to giving up land for public and community use. Award criteria are something the city could develop and use to support the community to form an adjudication panel that would publish its scores and rationale. Awards might be one of the only tools left to get neighborhoods to the residents that they deserve. Thank you again for this chance to talk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gursky. The next person we have is Priya Yiniksernanen, and I probably didn't say that right, and I will apologize. How do you say it?
Mayor West, it is Priya Unikrishnan.
All right.
Unikrishnan.
Okay, I'm gonna say that properly next time. Thanks. Go ahead, you've got 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Livable Richmond Hill, a grassroots group of Richmond Hill residents, I thank the staff and council for all the work you have done to familiarize us with the 4 official plan amendments. We know you are all working to address change under intense pressure from the region and province, and we appreciate your work. In general, we believe our city is on the right track in building transit-oriented communities. We know we must embrace the challenges ahead as we prepare to accommodate the projected 100,000 new residents by 2051. To that end, we have several important comments. 1, the density and height at Yonge and 16th key development area and traffic congestion all along Yonge Street. The Yonge and 16th KDA has some of the highest proposed density after Richmond Hill Center, with extremely tall high-rise buildings. Research has shown the link between high rises and poor mental health, especially among children. A significant concern for us is the proximity of this KDA to the David Dunlap Observatory. The proposed high-rise buildings are in the sight line from the observatory, and light pollution will disrupt astronomy programs in the prominent National Heritage Site. We request that the height of these buildings be reconsidered. Traffic congestion and car parking on Yonge and in the local centers is a major concern. We request that underground parking be considered to keep parked cars off Yonge Street. We also request a phased development and intensification in the local centers along Yonge. This would give the city an opportunity to evaluate whether additional density is realistic in the already dense area. Next, innovative design to build vibrant communities in local centers. We request the city to support the idea of awards for design excellence to promote leading-edge proposals from developers. The local centers must include open spaces that allow large gatherings that help build community. The local center should include all essential services, such as restaurants, grocery stores, healthcare, childcare, fitness, sports facilities, etc. Next is the lack of adequate parkland and green spaces in the 4 local centers. The 4 OPAs do not include the creation of new parks or the expansion of green spaces proportional to the anticipated increase in population. Access to natural green spaces is critical for mental health of residents, as revealed during the pandemic. Next is the adoption of Green Street Standards. We urge Council to adopt Green Street Standards developed by the City of Toronto, TRCA, and the Credit Valley Conservation to reduce stormwater infrastructure costs and to increase green space. Lastly, the adoption of planning tools. We strongly urge the City of Richmond Hill to adopt 2 planning systems. First one is the community planning permit system, by which municipalities can pre-approve development in an entire district by passing a single bylaw that lays out land use, height, and density. In addition to zoning, landscaping, parking, etc. The other planning tool is a complete application requirement system by which city can require the developer to complete several studies ahead of an application being approved, such as traffic, noise and vibration studies, environmental impact, and such. Thank you again to the staff and council for working hard towards building a livable Richmond Hill.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate those comments. Barbara Anderson is next. And Barbara is here in 3 dimensions. But you've got 5 minutes to speak to council.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Barbara Anderson, and I'm speaking about the next slide, please. I'm speaking about the tsunami of change that we're trying to deal with these 4 official plans amendments. And I support the Livable Richmond Hills comments on densities. What I'm going to speak about today is the idea of creating livable neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So our goal is with densities that we can create livable neighborhoods using Jane Jacobs' walkability guide and Crombie's sense of place. So we're creating areas that have workspaces, piazzas, connected greenways, and mixed uses. Also, I have comments on innovative stormwater management and some ideas to put forward. The issues with these densities in these 4 nodes is infrastructure and services, plans and costs. So again, with water and sewage, fire stations, schools, ambulance, and stormwater. With reduced development costs, how will these services be paid for? And also thinking about construction timing for 14 high rises at Carville and Yonge. We need detailed plans to create the kind of neighborhoods that we need, and we need innovative solutions. Next slide, please. So a couple of ideas on Crombie Park, which is from 1977. This is the gold standard for mixed residential use, and also very successfully 25% affordable housing. It's pedestrian friendly, dense population, and air conditioned. So next slide, please. Crombie part was led by Mayor Crombie. He took this leadership role and he didn't have the additional mayoral powers at the time. So I think maybe we're in good shape now to move forward. It's got a ball diamond, off-leash park. It's quite a site. It's very, very workable. And the school is actually integrated into the high rise. And the people, it's just teeming with people. Next slide, please. The next example is Sherwood Common, where we have a neighborhood-wide ultraviolet stormwater treatment. And the skating rink, which is displayed, is also in the summer a splash pad. So we have a gathering spot for people. Next slide, please. So the Sherman Commons has innovative stormwater management and a park for people. Next slide, please. I'm advocating similarly to Priya for the Green Street standards. And here's an example of the Stanley Green Boulevard in Downsview. So stormwater gain volumes are reduced and costs are reduced for our stormwater management, in addition to air quality and air conditioning costs. The next example, next slide, please. So when I was in Vancouver, this private development, very high density, had this rainwater collection system. So you can see fountains and water, all of this stuff can be done. It's all doable. We can figure out how to do it on the ground. Next slide, please. We do need a plan. We don't need patchwork approvals. We don't need conceptual plans or aerial concepts. We need street view so we can understand and see how things work together with the trees, the greenways and the waterways and all of these components. We also need wind tunnel studies for all seasons. So how do we build these neighborhoods? Currently, there's no secondary plan for Yonge and Carville. We would like a community plan permit system, at least a secondary plan or tertiary plan, collaborative efforts with the school and the city. And the next page is very quickly, sorry, next page is the public participation that was done by Crombie on the revitalization. So we need detailed plans. We to move forward to create the neighborhoods. And I support the design award challenge so that developers can move to this gold standard that we want for our neighborhoods and the green standards. Onwards and upwards, Richmond Hill Council.
Thanks very much. Okay, the next person we have is John Lee, who I think is joining us virtually. There you go, Mr. Lee. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I will be discussing the proposed Young 16 kVA plant. Slide number 1, please. Next slide, yeah. First, what surprised me about the draft plan is the proposed high density at the Young and the 16 intersection. How high are they? They surpass those in the core area around subway stations in the North York Center and Vaughan Metro Center. However, this area all have the advantage of a direct subway access and proximity to highways. We have none of these here. Therefore, the question arises, what justifies such a super high density development plan? The answer may surprise everyone. Is the developers. In a simple word, this planned density simply copied from the past developers' proposal. In the past few years, I have been involved in opposing most of a development project in this area. So I'm very familiar with the FIs listed on this map. Take, for example, the southeast corner of the Yonge 16th intersection at 9251 Yonge Street. In 2020, a developer proposed an FSI of 8.77 and 2 high-rise, 38 and 41 stories respectively. You can see the map, 8.77, directly copied from developer's plan. A similar situation occurred on the southeast corner of the intersection, where an FSI of 5.66 was copied directly from a developer proposal. It's critical to remember that these proposals were rejected by the previous council. They were often labeled as a pro-developer council and were returned to the developers. What has led our current planners to not only accept this density, but even approve high FSI than what the developer initially proposed? Why is this happening? Our residents deserve an answer. We approve more than what the developer asking for. Second, let's think about these developers' super high density plans. Do they really work in practice? This particular area is unique. We have got a railway track on the north-south bound, and also the street has a lot of restrictions. Therefore, the traffic, either from north-south or west-east, they cannot avoid this intersection. Within 500 meters, you cannot find alternatives. So all the traffic must pass this intersection. They make it really tough for traffic moving in any direction to find other ways around when they reach the intersection. I don't think our planners are aware that Young 16 intersection will rank #1 motorcycle collision injury site in York region. In other words, this intersection has been deemed most dangerous intersection in the entire York region for decades. According to York Region Traveler Safety Report, considering these geographical challenges and safety concerns, is it truly feasible to accommodate 23,000 residents in such close distance to this intersection? We need to carefully consider about its reality and what we want to sacrifice. Furthermore, it is widely recognized residential development is not the top priority in Richmond Hill. Instead, the focus should be on maintaining or enhancing the quality of life to ensure our city remain livable. However, this Young 16 draft plan appears to be moving to the opposite direction. It significantly reduced the available space at the Hillcrest Mall and undermined its future development possibility. Additionally, it greatly reduced the parking space and also affect access to this mall. So this is not what we want. It's critical that we undertake significant revision to reduce residential density and align with what the actually need our city want. So this is the challenge for developers, for planners, and also for our councillor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Okay, so we'll open this up at this point to members of the public that are here with us tonight. Is there anybody that would like to speak to this particular item on the agenda? Don't everybody put your hand up at the same time because it'll be confusing. Okay, so seeing none. Okay, we'll bring this back to council at this time then. This is Councillor Silovitz and Councillor Hsu. This is in your ward, and you'll have to arm wrestle over who goes first, but I'll pick Councillor Silovitz and then maybe to move the motion to return all the comments back to staff, and then Councillor Hsu, if you could go next, that would be great. Councillor Silovitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to everybody who spoke here this evening. You spoke so eloquently and so intelligently that we are compelled to listen to everything that you say. Thank you. And to everybody who wrote in, to all the communications that we have received, and to everybody who has contacted me as one of the local councillors, and I'm sure Councillor Hsu as well, and even possibly some of our regional councillors. This is an area that gives me enormous concern. So I can imagine how much concern it gives the residents as well. Mr. Lee asked one question, why? Why are we doing this? Why is there this much densification? Why is there this much height? Well, we are compelled to do this by the provincial government and the legislative bills that they have put forward that we, the municipalities, have to comply with. That's the answer to the why. I agree with Priya, who spoke so well, that we must consider parks and open green space. Well, we have the David Dunlap Observatory Park as a backyard for everybody who's going to be living in within this key development area. It's not really enough. The problem is that there is no more space for parks. So what we need is we need the developers and the landowners to give us more of that space, because there is none. And the only way we can get it is if they give it to us. If they offer it to us somehow, and we will take it, because those parks have to be developed in order to help protect the mental and emotional welfare and well-being of the residents who are going to move in there. Mike and Barbara, thank you very much for your comments. I agree absolutely on the short block design. I think that goes without saying now. We no longer have long streets like we do in parts of Ward 5. Blocks cannot be, they have to be within, I think it's 45 meters. So you cannot have long stretching blocks. So we do have the walkability, hopefully, that is being promised for this area. With regards to Mr. Lee's concern about Hillcrest Mall being the only mall in the area, I do believe that there will be other places that we will have shopping and restaurants and areas such as that, because these are mixed use buildings. So the lower levels, the ground levels of each building is going to, as you see going along Yonge Street already, will have those particular uses. But as for community use, community standards, I'm not so sure that we can agree that we are going to have enough parks and enough community places. The largest community, general community site here is the Richville Community Center. And that is within walking distance in the summer, in the spring, but perhaps not in the fall and the winter. And it will be overloaded. Lastly, I've said this many times when we've spoken about this particular intersection, and it's KDA/secondary plan, because that's what this is. We are planning for the future. While it may seem overwhelming right now, it is. I'm overwhelmed. I'm sure everybody else is. But the development of these buildings is years into the future, especially the conglomerate building of development of these buildings. So while that's not really a panacea for anything, it does help us to project into the future that there will be more people using transit. That's why this is a transit-oriented space, and that is why it has to be designed as such according to provincial legislation. So that's about all that I can say here. I know that I've said much more, and I will continue to speak more, and we'll say more when it comes back again to council. But I share all the residents' concerns. You're absolutely right. So I'll move recommendation A, and with all comments back to staff, and to receive the presentation from Mr. Chernwood. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Silvitz. Councillor Shu, you want to second that?
Yes, sure, absolutely. I want to second the motion that the recommendation made by the staff, and I will move forward. And before making my comments, I have to ask some questions to the staff to clarify something first. Based on my understanding, the main focus of this amendment is to expand the designated area, in particular, the northwest corner of the original one, which falls within Councillor Silver's ward. Am I correct?
Ms. Chu?
Sorry, Councillor Shu, could you please repeat your question?
Okay. Based on my understanding, the main focus of this amendment is to expand the Destiny area, in particular the northwest corner. This is north of Hillcrest Mall, of the original one, which falls within Councillor Silver's ward. Am I correct? That's the main focus of this amendment, right?
The expansion of the KDA boundary is among one of the many changes, but yes, you're right. The boundary will be expanded north to Baif Boulevard and south to Oak Avenue.
Okay. My second question is regarding the application process. Does it mean that all applicants still need to submit the land use amendment application before designating the subject land as KDA, right? Because everything's unchanged. All the procedure remains the same, right?
That's right. So and any applicant who wants to develop within the KDA still need to go through the development application process.
Good to know. Regarding the page 19 of the staff report, I find something very interesting. There's a mention of exclusion from the policy, including parks and open space uses. Could you provide more details on this point?
Yes, I believe you're speaking to the minimum density requirements.
Yep.
And we have that policy in place in order to ensure that the KDA achieves the minimum density requirement from the region, which is 300 people and jobs per hectare. But there are certain land uses that do not need to fulfill that because, for example, parks, that's not supposed to be intensified with lots of people and lots of jobs. It's a recreational, it's an open space. And so that's why that minimum density requirement is not applicable to parks.
I recall that we've made an amendment earlier this year regarding park dedication, changing it from 300 households to 1 hectare of a park's area to 600 households to 1 hectare of a park area. So are these referring to different aspects or are they the same thing? I'm quite confused.
So in terms of parkland dedication, that ratio that you're speaking to, there is a city bylaw on that, and that's separate and different from this official plan amendment. There is a separate process that developers go through when they submit an application. There may be a requirement that they provide parkland or cash in lieu of parkland, and that is applicable to all developers. But it is a separate process and it's different and separate from this OPA.
I see. Okay, so I would like to make some comments, and I'm not going to repeat some points, some comments made by delegates mentioned before to save more time. I would like to share some comments focusing on transportation. And in my opinion, the success of the official plan depends on people's willingness to utilize public transportation. As we are going to transform the character of the Destiny area, we will be making a walkable community there and encouraging people to take public transportation around. So I do believe that it is not sufficient to only encourage people to use public transportation through slogans. Not only slogans, we need to carefully consider how to connect people to the transportation hubs and subway station, because they will serve not only the residents living in the area nearby, but also a large area covering the entire city. So therefore, we must take additional measures, such as developing new forms of transportation like shuttle buses to facilitate movement, to encourage people to connect to the hub, to the subway station, something like that, especially during winter. And we need to address any factors that discourage people from using public transportation and launch educational initiatives to shift their mindset from relying on private vehicles to embracing public transportation. That's very important. And I think there is still a long way to go, but these efforts are crucial for the success of the plan. That's my comment. And that's all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Councillor Xu. The next we have Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff, for your presentation and the report. In particular, I want to thank everybody who wrote in, and also the delegates. And I particularly find it very forward-thinking that probably virtually all delegates are really talking about, seeking solution. Let me first set out the context. The context is that, as Councillor Silvers was talking about earlier, there is the provincial that push for that intensification. And KDA is the second most dense area other than Richmond Hill Center in the city of Richmond Hill. So that's one. Number two is a number of buildings of developments I think Mr. Lee referred to, and I know it quite well, is the 43 stories and the 38 stories proposal for the rental for purpose unit, which is before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And there's a number of also over 30-story building already been approved by OLT in the particular southwest corner of Yonge and Calville. So that's the context. Now, I have to share that I actually took the time this afternoon to park my car at the Smart Center at Yonge and northeast corner of 16, and I walk all the way up on Yonge Street to further north of Weldrick to actually patronize some of the local business in there. So I totally appreciate and understand that the delegates were talking about make the area walkable. I have to say, like today is not a very hot day, but I certainly, as a petition, I truly appreciate the widened boulevard. In fact, if there were any kind of outdoor cafe or things of that nature, public spaces along the way, and creativity is in the minds of the architects and the future application, can really make the place to be petition friendly. And I can tell from the simple one afternoon experience that could be done if the will is there and be creative. And I like to talk about award-winning design. I'm all for it. The other thing too is that we have to realize that also talking about transit, yes, it's not specific if this particular item we have today, but potentially future proposed development can actually provide incentive for people actually moving in there to have a monthly pass or in the future integrated transit fare between TTC and the future subway and the YLT, and that would help. The other thing too is that about the opportunity for both of the Northwest quadrant and Northeast quadrant when it's developed, potential of some private either ring road structure or some linear park that were more open spaces that provide the linkage and specifically mentioned about the David Dunbar Observatory I've mentioned a few times, and there's that potential of linking along 16 and Calville onto the multi, I would say, use trail along the GO transit line and linking to the Duncan Park on the southeast corner of Yonge and 16. And then really can walk up the trail and into DDO because in the future there will be also an overpass, the bridge linking. Actually, people can walk from Yonge Street to Upsherry Lane all the way to DDO Park. So all in all, I think the opportunity is there. And I'm just going to end it by saying that if you're looking forward, as my colleagues say, this is a phase development. Things are not happening in next year or even 5 years. It may be 15, 20, 25 years. So I know it's kind of scary when I look at the report. Wow, it may be up to 55 stories, but not really in the foreseeable future. And I think also opportunity, and perhaps this is more for the future applicants, to think about the potential collaboration with other organizations such as YMCA, YWCA, in terms of having those community facilities that actually be win-win scenario for the development, for the city, and for the resident. I will leave it as that, but I think there's also potential with higher density. Could look in the future of energy saving for district energy system. And I know it can work with the density. And in fact, someone referring to Combi Park and all that in Toronto, I have already seen the City Lab with proposal. Things can be
Okay.
economical and environmental friendly. And that's my comment. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Regional Councillor DePaulo.
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, I've a lot to say in 5 minutes here, and this is an extremely exciting exercise that the city of Richmond Hill is undergoing. Normally, we have applicants that come before council and they want to make official plan amendments and zoning amendments, and they present their case and we consider their merits. But this time we're the applicant. It's the city of Richmond Hill is proposing these official plan amendments, and we're at the formal meeting where the public can make comments, and I know our staff is listening carefully. I really want to thank those who came forward today as delegations and those who submitted correspondence. And so many of the comments are they're so bang on. This is exactly what we're trying to achieve with this exercise. The points that were made by Mr. Gursky about this, being a coordinated or architectural achievement. That's what we want to see here, and the desire for walkability, not just lip service to that, but we want to set a new standard. We want to achieve the highest walkability rankings by any metric or any index. Richmond Hill is intending to be a leader here in putting a community together that's truly mixed use. This will be a commercial center and hub that will provide every possible amenity that the residents living here will require in that very short walking distance. So, like I said, there's so much to say. I want people to understand that this is a 30-year planning exercise, a vision that the city needs to do. We will get overrun with applications if we don't carefully plan. And the reason we've chosen the KDAs that we have no choice but to welcome 100,000 new residents between now and 2040. So they have to go somewhere. So this planning and why the density, besides the fact that it fits with the provincial policy and the regional policies about intensification and transit corridors, it's also to protect our neighborhoods throughout Richmond Hill. If we were to absorb the density in any other way, we'd be shoehorning unwanted projects and unwanted densities into every neighborhood across Richmond Hill. So I think our staff has done an excellent job in identifying where that density is going to go. And Yonge and 16th is not arbitrarily chosen. They're the two major landowners, essentially OMERS, represented by Oxford as a management company, and Smart Centers, which is a public traded company, have 7/8 of this key development area and have all-encompassing comprehensive plans, but they've got a 30 to 40 year build out. It's a long-term plan, and what's going to happen a lot sooner is the subway at Yonge and Highway 7 in 10 years, and then a very short time after that, it's very easy to travel 3/4 of a kilometer above ground from the high-tech station that's been proposed to Yonge and 16th. So this KDA allows for a subway station, which is anywhere from 10 to 15 years away, and that's what these new 25,000 residents are going to have immediate access to. They'll push a button on their elevator and go to underground access to the subway. But we need those pedestrian connections throughout this area, both to the public transit, just a sense of community that there's open squares and opportunities for pedestrians, but to our fabulous observatory park and to the other parks, and a connection right from Highway 7, a linear park that connects the two major KDAs. And we are purchased land and we're building that bridge over to the observatory. So the city is doing a great job planning this, but we need your help, and we need to hear from everyone in Richmond Hill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. To our staff first. My first question regarding the population, I'm going to echo Barbara's comments. So she mentioned from those 4 plans, right, KDA plans, and also other forecasts, OPs, we have around 50,000 residents in scope, and plus that our young extension, which is another 50,000. So if we combine together, so that's the 100,000 only from this 5 project. And plus, as by 2023, if I remember correctly, we have around 200 projects. And plus previous approved project, that's around 10,000 houses. I don't know how many here. So if you sum that together, which is more than, I think, at least 120,000 people in the scope, just from the small areas. So my comment here from population perspective, what is our projection in next 10, 20, 30 years for the population growth? And what is our OP's plan to hosting or provide facilities for this population increase?
Ms. Chu, I mean, notwithstanding that the school board would be the commenter on the school's needs, right? But we have some comments on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the official plan amendments have been developed in consultation with the school boards. So we have received comments back. They are aware of the projected growth. They do their own process to determine impacts on pupil yields and school requirements. So we have been in consultation with the school boards to understand their requirements, and they've given us feedback on that. To your second question with regards to the population projection that is set out in the York Region official plan, the city is projected to grow over the next 40 years, 2051 by over 100,000 people.
So I'll say this way, our projection here based on the housing is quite fit for the population increase, right? So here, as I summarize, is 100,000 resident or houses dwellings. And the population is around 100,000 as well. But if you look at a dwelling, right? If you count 3 members of family, that's 300,000, which is triple than the population itself we project here. So my concern here is the first one is if our projection compared with the population increase, compared with the housing we are projecting are quite different. If in the next 20, 30 years, we have another 20,000 new home built up, which has not enough residents, what do we do? I'm just throw the question to you to consider that. So I don't want to make a projection like the housing is this side. When people purchasing, we only have this side. We have big gap here. Then it's a devaluation of our real estate, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a long-term plan with projections for full build out into the future, but it is evolving. So it's a framework that allows us to respond as development proceeds. It's not going to be a perfect, I guess, prediction of the exact number of residents and households, but we'll definitely we'll take those into consideration. But again, it is a projection, and it's for the long-term future, and it allows us to respond to the development over the next few decades.
Yeah, one comment here is because for all council members, maybe you're gonna sit in here for next few terms, but maybe someone's only 1 term. So I don't want to make a projections is over above the reality? Because that's my comment, first one. I don't need answer, okay? The second one regarding commercials, as we all know, 87%, if I remember numbers correct, 87% are tax coming from the residents, and only 13 to 14% coming from either commercial or industrial. For this OPs, so I would say there are more people coming here. It's mainly driven by the residential. In the future, if I have more budget or more taxes, are we going to make a balance a little bit and enhance the commercial part in our new OPs? That is my concerns, because for what I see is the majority of the plan is building in pacify the residents' ratios. But how about the commercial? Because along the Yonge Street, really, this is really golden corridor. How can we make a balance when we're projecting the more residents dwellings? Meantime, we're going to look at after the commercial areas as well. I don't want for 10 years later on, 90% or 95% tax coming for our residents. The commercial is dropping down to 5%. That is my second question or inquiries here.
Thank you, Councillor Tree. So the OPA for 18.5 for the Yonge and 16th Avenue KDA, it does have enhanced policies that require non-residential development to take place over time. And so we have targets that a minimal 15% of all new development should be non-residential gross floor area. And so we have policies that require development to put commercial, retail, or community uses on the main floor or the ground floor of new buildings. And there's also a stretch of the Market Promenade, which runs along the Smart Center lands as well as the Hillcrest lands. And that Market Promenade is supposed to incorporate retail, commercial, and community uses both on the main floor as well as in the podiums of the buildings where it's feasible.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm looking for that percentage better way when we look back maybe 10 years later on, and that ratio of commercial really fit our target. My third question regarding traffic and accessibilities. As I know, this area is very intensive, so traffic is very, very heavy. So how can we ensure the accessibilities from the residents living in there in future access either subway or public transit, which is around 1.5 kilometers from their building? Do we have any underground pass or bridge pass? What is our city's consideration here?
Yeah, so for this KDA, as you know, there are potential future GO station as well as the subway station. And the road network for this KDA, it spans across the 4 quadrants. So we want to be able to have connections across the 4 quadrants and especially towards the transit stations. We have active transportation network in terms of trails as well as street cycling facilities. And in terms of what your question about, having underground pathways, certainly that's something we could converse with Metrolinx, as they plan for and design for these new stations. Definitely underground pathways are excellent for the winter condition, to help people move during the cold weather. And I know that for the Market Promenade that runs in the northern quadrant, we are advocating with York Region to provide a multimodal crossing in that area too. So to facilitate more pedestrian and cycling as well as vehicular connections.
Because if you ever go visiting the Toronto Convention Center from Union Station, you can see all the buildings are connected. You can have walking. So this is my thought. In the future, if we have more buildings, maybe we can use that building to build up a tunnel or canals across to our subway. That's only my suggestions. in this case, winter, right, when snow cover the street, we do have another way to get our residents access our public transit. I do have minutes. I do have a last one regarding green space and also the recreation community centers. As I see in the past few years.
Actually, you know what? Sorry, Councillor, just to, on this, in the spirit of keeping everything straight, can we go to a second round?
Okay, sure, thanks.
Is there anybody else on the first round? Okay, I will just make a couple of quick comments. So this is an exciting plan, and there, you know, like any plan that we're going to come forward, there are certainly going to be challenges, and I really appreciate all the comments that were made here tonight. I have to say that the first three presentations in particular, there were many things that you said that I agree with wholeheartedly, and I won't belabor them, but I do want to say that I do appreciate the fact that this needs to be an area that is very animated. There should be people walking around in that area using the public spaces at all hours of the day and into the evening, and that needs to be achieved, and that's very important. It needs to be a really dynamic area of our city. And, you know, we do want design excellence in our buildings. We want interesting spaces for people to live, shop, you know, and even work. The walkability, I think, is really, really important. And I like what I'm seeing here, but I think, you know, we need to push as hard as we can to make sure that we're having that baked into the plan. And the one thing that really hasn't been talked about a lot, but I think there's an opportunity here for building things that are a greater range of affordability for more people. And that's incredibly important. And I think maybe that's probably one of the most practical, exciting parts of this plan, that it is a bit of a blank canvas. I mean, at the present moment, the vast majority of that area is a parking lot. Right? I mean, there are some commercial spaces there, but I have no doubt in my mind that we can probably achieve more than save and except Hillcrest Mall. We can get more commercial spaces there that are in there now. So the amount of jobs and retail opportunities and, you know, plazas that have, you know, places where people can, you know, have a beer in the summer and all that kind of stuff should be way more than what we have right now. And I would expect that we need to make sure that that happens. And there's no compromises on that. That's absolutely crucial to this area. So the mixed use commercial, we need to demand that. And I know we're moving in that direction, but I just want to emphasize that. The one thing that I will say is that I mean, I'm not disappointed in this because I understand the challenges, but I really think when I'm looking at this plan, there isn't a lot of green open spaces. And I understand why. I can probably, and I will say in fairness, there's a number of green spaces on the periphery of this plan, which I think will serve the community well. I mean, we've talked about the bridge to the Dunlop Observatory Park. I mean, that's going to be a huge draw for this area, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure that the connections and the convenience of getting into that park from this area is just a no-brainer. And the bridge that we're planning is very important in that regard. But I guess what I'd like to see, and I'd like to talk to staff maybe a little bit more offline about this, but if we're not going to have green public spaces because of the challenges that are in that, we at the very least need to have really interesting urban open spaces that are maybe not, you know, grass and all that stuff, but there's all kinds of examples of really unique places for people to get together, hang out, you know, sit down, enjoy the people watching, you know, that type of thing. And I think we have the opportunity to do that because, as I said before, this is a blank canvas. I'm seeing evidence of us moving in that direction, but I think we need, again, to really push between now and the time that this comes back for final approval to make sure that we can bake into the plan lots and lots of reasons for people to go there. So if you live in that area, that's great. But if people that don't live in that area are going to want to go to that place. And I mean, this is only the first item on the agenda tonight. There's lots of other destinations that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So I'm out of time, but that's basically the things that I think jumped out at me. I think this is a plan over time, but it is something that I would really like to see some of those amenities getting built out as quickly as we possibly can to start the ball rolling as the rest of the plan gets built out in the coming, years, decades, whatever. So, okay, so that's it for the first round. Councillor Tree, you wanted to have a second round, and Councillor DiPaolo, is that an old hand up or a new hand? New hand? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair, I do have two questions. The first one I want to echo here is about green space. Yes, that's right. As we cannot have more public space for parks because look at the size of this piece of land, right? And accessibility to other parts, if we don't have any underground or any good passageway, it's very challenging for seniors walking for 1 kilometer, which is 20 minutes or even longer time, right? Especially in winter. So urban or local green spaces between the buildings, right? Some places, decorations, water parks, whatever, you can name it, small bodies, accessible for all the residents, not only for one building, maybe many buildings share one spot. That one need a coordination from city because for builder itself, I only build one building. I don't care about others. But for the city, because we are providing the overall plans, the better way is city put the visions, 3 buildings here, we need a certain space for just local people have entertainment, right? And this is my suggestion regarding to the green part. I do have another one here. I think Deputy Mayor Godwin Chan mentioned before, which is our sunset clause for our builders. So basically is we approved many plans in the past. How many is really in practice? How many buildings we have installed? Almost some of them built up, but majority of them just they pass the applicants and they sit there dormitory. So it's very challenging for city to project the populations and also the new plans. So my suggestion here is echo to our deputy mayor's recommendations, also motions. If we have a sunset clause for the future development, it will not only benefits for our planning department for projections, also benefits for council members. We don't need to repeat for the same applicants from 5 floor become 10, become 20, non-stop, right? So this way will be benefits for a lot of people. This is my second idea. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just quickly wanted to mention a couple of things because I think it's important that it be said. One of the other goals, in creating this KDA and allowing for this type of density is to achieve more affordable options for Richmond Hill residents. So the housing affordability is so important now, and we have so many limited options. We have basically zero vacancy for rental options in Richmond Hill, and because of that, rent prices are skyrocketing, and there's no real competition between landlords to offer units at a lower rate. Now, OMERS, I'm certain of, on the Hillcrest Mall property, is intending to retain ownership of all the buildings that they would be building, and they will greatly increase the number of rental units that are placed and available on the market. So that will help with competition, help with prices, so people can live more affordably in Richmond Hill, and again with the walkability, if you don't have to drive a car and pay for insurance and gas and all those other transportation and commuting costs, and we're trying to provide affordable options for the youth in Richmond Hill to stay in the city that they grew up in, for our seniors to retire in the community that they've lived their whole lives and are getting priced out of in some cases. So that is so important. That's an element that needs to be pushed and drafted into the OP update as much as possible. And we need to force landowners as they come forward, not just to calculate the gross floor area times a certain number and get a check from them for cash in lieu of parkland. That equivalent amount, they have to make every possible effort to give the city open park space. It could even take community passageways, covered walkways. They have to build another pedestrian bridge. The one that we're building, we're using taxpayers' dollars at the end of Observatory Lane to get pedestrian bridge over the train tracks. But I think the landowners here should be compelled to build a second pedestrian bridge and access for all the people coming in from further from outside areas to use the observatory and other parks and take advantage of this regional shopping center. Hillcrest Mall was always a regional shopping center. People came from Stouffville and King City and all over to shop at Hillcrest Mall. Now they all have options in their areas, but as Yonge Highway 7 will be Union Station of the North, this here is Bloor Street. It's the shopping district. It's Yorkdale. That's what is going to happen here. It will be a destination shopping location. The Hillcrest Mall has every reason to make sure that they're improving and allowing them providing a much more robust commercial area for their tenants. They will be the landlords for thousands of people living in their former parking lot. So they've got built-in customers there, but Smart Centers and them will be trying to make this an attractive place to and a destination shopping center. But in our official plan, they have to be forced to provide the adequate parking, to provide easy access off of Yonge or 16th for cars, and ample underground parking, not just visitor parking for people visiting the residents living there, but commercial visitors and shoppers that are being attracted from all over to make sure there's ample parking. So underground, so that this area works. Those are the types of considerations that have to get into this final draft OP. And I just wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, that our discussions are just beginning today formally. We've got other meetings. We've got we don't expect these changes to be ratified by council until late in the fall, maybe even next year. So we continue to consult the public over the course of the summer. There will be more opportunities. So get your correspondence and comments in so we can incorporate that into this new plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very quick. Thank you for indulgence. I would like to first thank staff for the report. This is really, really great. I think it's reasonable amendment. And also echoed all my colleagues' comments, especially in terms of the green space, in terms of, I really love the sunset clause and also the accessibility and everything. I echo everything my colleagues' comments. And I really, really love the delegates' points. Especially, I'm all for the award-winning design, the rain collection, thing. And also, there's one point I would like to ask staff through you, Mr. Mayor, that one of the delegates mentioned about the height of the buildings and which will directly or indirectly have light pollution to the David Dunlap Observatory. So in what stage of the process that we can incorporate, the delegate's idea in the official plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. Ms. Chu?
Thank you, Councillor Liu. In terms of the DDO lands, we have heard from the DDO defenders who also had concerns about light pollution. It is noted that that the DDO observatory it's no longer a functioning for research purposes any longer, but it is a heritage designation. And there are users who, who continue to use the observatory. In terms of light pollution, we will consider it as a part of this OPA review. But I think overall, light pollution is not focused, in one area of the city. Light pollution is actually an accumulation of light across all municipalities, right? Not just Richmond Hill, but Markham and Toronto. Like it's cumulative light pollution, and so that is something we do want to look into, and that's something we may consider as a part of the housekeeping OPA in the fall, because this is something we believe is not just specific to the Young and 16 or Carville KDA, but it's municipal wide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'm glad that Regional Councillor DePaula mentioned about Hillcrest Mall. I just have a question pop up in my mind that is going to be a designated shopping area, no doubt. So with all the happenings, all the increase of population around Hillcrest Mall, is there a plan for expansion for Hillcrest Mall? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. We are in conversation with the Hillcrest Mall owner, which is Oxford Properties. As far as we know, they have long-term plans to retain and maintain that Hillcrest Mall. In terms of expansion, we're not quite sure. They're not sharing that with us.
Thank you. That's all my comments and questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I think the common theme that we're hearing tonight here is we want to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit to the community. There are obviously downsides to development, which we do hear about every now and again from various sources. But I think, this is exciting in the sense that we're building something that doesn't exist now. And I think we need to make sure that we are getting as many of those benefits as we possibly can and securing them for our community in the future. So I think that's it for the speakers list. We certainly had a robust conversation on this, and we have lots more to come. So all those in favor of the motion to refer all comments back to staff, that carries unanimously. Thank you so much. So the next item on the agenda is OPA 18.6, Village Local Center. And the presentation by staff is going to be by Megan Cobold, Senior Planner Policy. And Megan, you're here with us. So if you want to start us off, that would be great.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I'm now going to present an overview of draft OPA 18.6 regarding the Village Local Center. And next slide, please. The intent of OPA 18.6 is to address matters that are important to the long-term planning of the Village Local Center and to conform to updates to the York Region Official Plan and provincial plans and policies. OPA 18.6 proposes to updates to the city's official plan by providing detailed planning policies and schedules for the area. And in doing so, it also satisfies the OP's secondary plan requirements. Next slide, please. The village area is identified as a local center according to our city structure and intensification hierarchy. This means the Village Local Center will accommodate intensification at a scale less than the Richmond Hill Center, key development areas, and generally less than the budding regional corridor. This area is envisioned to be a village within the city that's vibrant, walkable, accessible, and green, and that provides opportunities for entertainment, community gathering and events, and appreciate the city's history and diversity. Next slide, please. The Village Local Center is located within two protected major transit station areas, or PMTSAs. The province and the region require local municipalities to direct growth to PMTSAs in order to support ridership and transit investment. This area must achieve a minimum density of 160 people and jobs per hectare. OPA 18.6 provides policies to achieve this target over the long term. At full build out, which is an estimated time horizon of 30+ years, the village local center policies propose to accommodate 360 people and jobs per hectare, which generally translates to approximately 10,000 people and 3,700 jobs. And next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of land use, OPA 18.6 proposes to continue to permit a mix of land uses, including both residential and non-residential uses. It proposes to permit non-residential uses throughout the center to support the mixed use vision and also recognize existing uses. It requires non-residential uses such as commercial and retail at grade along Yonge Street and also along Major Mackenzie Drive. It also proposes to require development to retain or exceed the existing amount of gross leasable floor area of retail, commercial, and office use in new development. It encourages office use to promote job creation and economic development in the city. And collectively, these proposed changes are to support the animation of the street and also provide opportunities for employment and services nearby. And OPA 18.6 carries forward and builds on existing policies related to built form and urban design to support the historic character of the area. New development will still be required to protect significant views to the historic church spires, and where possible, heritage buildings will be required to be incorporated into the design of new buildings. Transition to the surrounding neighborhood will be addressed through the application of angular plane requirements and permissions regarding heightened density and others, such as supporting human scale urban design. The proposed height for most of the local center ranges between 2 to 9 stories to support the development of primarily mid-rise buildings. The area north of Wright Street and Dunlop Street permits buildings up to 15 stories, which is mostly a carry forward of current permissions in the official plan. The schedule on the right identifies maximum site densities to support these types of built forms, and generally the densities decrease lower as you move towards the surrounding neighborhood. And next slide, please. Thank you. And OPA 18.6 proposes policies to enhance the public realm and includes a corresponding schedule which identifies proposed cycling facilities and also extensions of Crosby Avenue and Elizabeth Street. The alignment of the proposed streets are conceptual and would only occur if these lands were to be redeveloped in the future. The policies also encourage new development to provide pedestrian and cycling connections between sites and require sidewalks to be provided on both sides of any new public streets. At this time, new park expansions are proposed to occur just outside the local center boundary. However, the policies encourage the creation of new urban plazas to enhance the park system and vibrancy of the area. And next slide, please. In terms of next steps, so following tonight's meetings, staff will provide opportunities for meetings with stakeholders to go over their feedback. And then staff will be analyzing the feedback and making any modifications if necessary before the policies are brought forward to council for adoption in the fall. And the recommendation at this time is that the presentation and staff report be received and that all comments be referred back to staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got a few people signed up as delegates. So we'll go to those first, and then we'll come back to anybody else that would like to speak that's here and with us. So the first person is Mike Gursky again. Mike, you get frequent flyer points if you speak more than twice in a meeting. So you're well on your way, sir.
I'm going to keep it really, really short because I've shot my load. Jane Jacobs said that if you want to have community, you narrow the streets and you reduce the number of cars. So I was just in New York the other day, and Broadway, if you remember some of the older movies, it's like 6 lanes wide. Right now, Broadway has 1 lane for cars. That's it. Everything else is taken up with big pedestrian sidewalks, eateries, dedicated bike lanes, and a dedicated bus lane. So just in terms of, you want people on the street, get rid of the cars. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. The second person is Priya Unikrishna. shoot, Una Krishnan. Oh, you're not on the, I think you're on the list here the second time. You can speak if you'd like, but you don't have to. I will give you frequent flyer points just for being here. Okay. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Mike Yarrington from KLM Planning. Welcome, Mike. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor West, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Mark Yarrington. I'm with the firm of KLM Planning Partners. Prior to this evening's public meeting, I filed detailed comments in my letter dated June 19th, 2023, on behalf of the Major Mackenzie Landowners Group, which is contained within your agenda package, with respect to their collective lands that are located on the north side of Major Mackenzie Drive at the west limit of the local center. And just due to the time constraints, I will keep my comments here tonight more of a summary nature. In general, we are concerned that the proposed OPA 18.6 will not enable my client's land to develop to their full potential with respect to density and height, given their location and opportunities. Our clients' lands have unique attributes. These lands directly relate to Major Mackenzie Drive and the emerging use and built form on the south side of Major Mackenzie Drive, rather than the historic downtown core, which is focused along Yonge Street north of Major Mackenzie Drive. Their site is located within a 5-minute walk to the existing transit station at Yonge Street and Major Mackenzie Drive. The combined lot depth and areas can accommodate increased density and height. There is minimal interface with low-rise residential to contend with in terms of transition requirements. These lands are not subject to proposed policies requiring protection of angular planes on Yonge Street to preserve views of church, spires, other architectural heritage features along the Yonge Street corridor. In addition, there's an abundance of parks, community facilities in the immediate vicinity that would support intensification. And again, as we've heard here tonight, we think we can ensure through development applications that we do achieve design excellence. In addition, there is precedent on the south side of Major Mackenzie Drive and along Yonge Street for higher densities and heights that have been approved in the range of 15 to 21 stories, with FSIs to 3.3 to 5.1. The region's official plan intensification hierarchy recognizes that MTSAs are to have the highest density only to be higher in regional centers and MTSAs with subway service, and that the built form and scale of development in the MTSAs will support this hierarchy. MTSAs, and we've heard a little bit about it in terms of comments tonight, are to be the focus of affordable housing. The region's policies also set out requirements for local official plan amendments with respect to MTSAs, and notably, these do not require maximum height and density requirements to be established within local official plans. And based on these policies, we would request that the policies for OPA 18.6 not establish maximum densities or heights for our clients' lands, as we think this could have unintended consequences of limiting development and undermining the intent of supporting transit and the revitalization of the downtown core. Policies to address maximum height and densities in these circumstances, I would put forward, are best dealt with through policies that will encourage no adverse physical or functional impacts. And what I mean with that are robust policies and guidelines with respect to transition, servicing capacity, access, traffic capacity, on-site amenities, parking, et cetera. We also would ask that the use of the 45-degree angular plane as a transition to existing low-rise be re-examined, as this can result again in inefficient buildings and added expense. We would request that policies provide flexibility that would allow other options other than just a public street for the proposed Elizabeth Street extension, which could include private drives, public access, and the potential for active transportation connection only options. Sidewalks on both sides of Elizabeth Street in the event of a new public street would also be difficult because we do not believe that that is currently exists on Elizabeth Street to the north. Just in closing, we think that our concerns could be addressed by adding further site-specific policies for my clients' lands that allows the details of the maximum height density together with the details of the Elizabeth Street extension to be worked through with city staff. I would thank you for the opportunity to participate in this official plan matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Barbara Anderson. You good?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Mr. Chapnick.
My printer is on the other side of my kitchen, which had the floor varnished today. I'm not allowed into the kitchen to get to the printer. So I have what I want to say on my phone.
Yeah, I've never, ever heard an excuse like that.
Never heard that.
That's excellent. Even if it's true or not, it's very
It's going to
creative.
be a little harder for me to read than
Okay,
normal.
we'll make allowances
I'll
for
do
that.
my best. First, I guess I would like to thank planning staff for their efforts and putting together OPA 18.6. I think in general, from the standpoint of somebody who lives nearby, it's pretty reasonable and it's a good initial cut. We have a few comments, which I'll get to in a minute. But I also, because I'm probably not going to get the chance to speak again, want to react to the last speaker, which I would 100% oppose any such change to the angular plane and to the density requirements just to support a profit on behalf of his clients, to ruin what is actually a good plan that has been put together by planning staff. So thank you very much for that. What I have to say tonight is really for council. So Mr. Mayor, councillors of Richmond Hill. I live about a 5-minute walk west of the Village District. As it's defined now in draft OPA 18.6, extending from Major Mackenzie up to just north of Bright Street. And I've lived here for almost 20 years, and I've witnessed quite a few changes. But none of these comes even close to the changes that are envisioned by the new official plan amendment, which will see densities throughout this area triple or quadruple over the coming decades, and commercial retail uses spread into what was previously a residential area. I have reviewed the draft OPA, and I note that it also presumes, and I'm not sure if this applies to all the other OPAs, I don't think it does, I haven't read them all in detail, to eliminate the need for any future secondary plan. And it's therefore critical to understand what is being proposed and to make appropriate revisions before it is ultimately finalized. A particular concern to myself and many of my neighbors are a bit of a lack of adequate policies relating to transitions to the adjacent neighborhoods, where we have lots of historic homes that have been there for 200 years or more. Protecting our existing neighborhoods is understood to be one of the pillars of the new official plan, as outlined in the key directions report approved 2 years ago. And yet this amendment proposes to introduce high-density residential uses, as well as commercial retail uses throughout the area, without some of the appropriate limitations on specific uses that were included within the existing OP to protect adjacent residential areas, or enhanced transition policies, which would help to offset the effect of the dramatic increases in proposed densities. Some specific concerns have been outlined in a letter that you should have before you, which was sent to the official plan update committee from the Village Core Residents Association. And I intend and will have scheduled to meet with planning staff in the near future with Councillor Quee to discuss and hopefully resolve these concerns before a finalized version of the OPA comes before you in the fall. Now, the rest of my comments have to deal not with the final build out and what the OPA envisions in the end in 30 years, but the process of getting there. So this is not specifically addressed in the OPA, but it's a related concern for many of the residents of our area. The disruption which will be caused by the ongoing construction activities, which will probably keep going and never end between now and 30 years from now. There's already a growing number of complaints related to insufficient enforcement of our bylaws, which govern noise, property standards, and even street parking related to construction sites. And with the planned growth, it is more critical than ever that the city address these issues to prevent widespread dissatisfaction amongst our residents. Breaches or exemptions to the bylaws, which infringe on the rights of our citizens to the quiet enjoyment of their properties, should not be permitted. And council needs to ensure that staff have adequate resources to do a diligent job in enforcing these requirements. Unfortunately, not everyone has the patience or tolerance which will be needed to live through the process of change that is to come with this new vision of the future. I know many people who have already sold their homes and are moving to other areas which are not planning such dramatic changes, as they consider their quality of life in the short term to be as or more important than the potential long-term benefits which this official plan may help to realize. In my opinion, council should be doing whatever it can to ease such concerns, to provide as much comfort as possible to the residents of Richmond Hill, that in spite of any growth pains, it will be worthwhile to stay and enjoy what the city has to offer. I entreat you to send this message to the people of Richmond Hill through your decisive actions to promote the plans, laws, or policies which protect and enhance the daily lives of our residents, even as together we watch it grow. I thank you for your attention and for all that you do to make Richmond Hill a better place to live and to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this particular amendment? Okay, Mr. Evans? I almost said sold, so you're just in time.
It'd be very embarrassing if I missed the call.
I know, go ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Murray Evans. Your Worship, myself and my colleague, Mr. Layton back there. If I can, Aaron, can I just get you the Zoom there? We act on behalf of 15 to 20 owners of land in the downtown or former downtown local center, now village center. And you can see, well, hopefully. Okay, how about we do this? We'll go to the old school.
Okay, yeah, we're familiar with that map.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're not familiar. We did it today.
There you go.
So these are the people that I am speaking on behalf. Again, there's 35 properties represented here. And that totals about 15 acres of land, believe it or not. And there's about 3,000 feet of frontage in that that I'm speaking on behalf of. And as you can see, Your Worship, it's a concerted, coordinated exercise by these landowners to take to heart to ensure that policies are ingrained in the OP that would allow the downtown area to evolve as we all want. And you heard earlier, Mr. Gursky and Ms. Anderson speaking about idyllic, achievable elements that we should have in an urban environment. And here's an ironic thing. I'm a henchman for developers. They can be achieved. But there's always a but in those things. But there has to be an urban economic land arrangement that makes it achievable and doable, and also is an incentive for these individuals and other landowners in the area who want to move forward to see that evolution. Through these visioning exercises that have been ongoing, I don't know anyone who has not said that we don't want a vibrant, we want a successful and active downtown area where we can go and I don't have to go to Aurora for a beer on a Friday night. We want to be able to have restaurants and medical facilities and cultural activities downtown. How do we do that? We need people. And you're either going to bring them in there and create something special like an old Unionville, or you have to have people. And as you just heard from Mr. Yarrington, this is a center. People should be located in this area where we work, we walk, we recreate, all of those wonderful things we can do in close proximity. So how do we do that? And quite frankly, the challenge, I don't envy council because you have a tough job here. On one hand, we want to retain the feel of old Richmond Hill. Understand that, and everyone knows that. But we also have to move forward. We have to create an inertia that will allow restaurants, chains, economic activities to come in here because there needs to be a threshold of population. And you heard from Ms. Coble, potentially 10,000 people coming into this area. Well, we need to be able to put that in there, but it also has to, whatever the policies are, they have to achieve and respond to the unusual and complicated situation we have in the downtown. What do you have? Multiple landowners. We have to somehow get them all to get together. It's a very difficult job. And quite frankly, the policies of the 2010 plan weren't that accommodating. And you can see what have we had happen in the downtown area since 2010? Very limited activities. So your worship, members of council, I'm here to ask that it's a wonderful step forward what we saw in the staff report about densities of 9.0 and 3. But I'm here as asking that there needs to be an economic inertia. And I'm going to suggest to council that we're looking at 12 stories for downtown and 18 stories in that area for Wright. Now, the one thing I'll very briefly get to, we've done a little bit of this is a grade school massing exercise. It's very difficult on small properties to achieve any kind of heights that are being recommended in the policies at 3.0. Very difficult because you're approaching not 100% coverage, but as you can see in some of these 70% coverages. And at 70% coverages at 3.0, you're getting 3, 4, 5 stories, not even close to 9 stories and certainly not 12. So I will finish off, Mr. Mayor, saying Mr. Yarrington has a great idea there. What about taking a height? I'm going to differ from his view. What about maximum heights, no floor space index, and that be governed by achievable compliance with urban objectives of parking, amenity space, angular planes, and setbacks. And that way, you know what you're going to get. And if a site can sustain additional density, why not?
Okay.
I'll leave it at that, sir.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So anybody else in the audience? Okay. Yep. Come on up, sir. Just state your name and address for the record. And then you got 5 minutes.
I won't be long. This is off the cuff. My name's Rod Birch. I live 299 Elmwood Avenue. Elmwood Avenue. I'm commenting on the last couple presentations that have been about developers wanting higher densities and higher building heights. In your mandate is for also jobs to be so many jobs per hectare. Maybe it should be the city's focus to start with the jobs instead of the houses. That's just my opinion on this, making high densities. I think high density residential is going to incur more crime, and without jobs, there'll definitely be more crime. And the cities hasn't been really, anybody has been talking about making slums. That's what I'd like to comment on this. For.
Nope, no problem. No, thank you. This is why we're here tonight. So I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, come on up.
My name is Lillian Dominguez, and I'm at 1 Forest Ridge Road, Richmond Hill. This actually is on behalf of someone that couldn't be here. So she asked me to ask these 2 questions. Actually, there's 3 comments. One is that all around, most residents have no idea about these meetings. There was only one sign at Young and 16, and there was no other signs found. So nobody's aware of what's really happening here. So it's very few people attending, and it's a lot going on. So I think it will be fair to that maybe mailing some kind of notification, or it has to be a way for more people to be aware of what's going on. Second question she has, she attended the last meeting on June 7th, and her question was, how come this major infrastructure is really like lacking schools? So you're bringing, so far, she hasn't seen any school developments. And I think that was touched before, like that was one of the concerns, but that was not in the plans at all. So that was one. And her other question was, she's disabled. And so she asked one of the planners, one of the head planners, about why are they designing neighborhoods to be inaccessible by car when cars are supposed to be electric in the near future, according to the plan? So that was the question. That was just her comments. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Thanks very much for coming on her behalf. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring this back to council, and since Councillor Tree, it's your ward and Councillor Thompson's ward, but we'll start with you. Councillor Thompson, if you could second it, that'd be great. So Councillor Tree, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. to our audience, and also our city staff. So first one, thank you so much for put the slide here. I know there's a lot of work here, so appreciate all the efforts for our city staff, this talk. And my first question, maybe it's behalf on the BIA, because we have a lot of business along the city, along that the village core areas. So my first question is, and we see a lot of the plannings here. There are few major concerns resolved by BIA, especially for the business owners. The first one is so important, I want to ask. I think before me, there was a city's parking plan as an official parking plan. What is that status to benefit this plan to give the business more space, parking space, attract more people coming to downtown? Is there any updates just for parking perspective?
Okay, staff, anybody want to talk about that? An update on the parking plan, or I guess really, and how it relates to this is probably the way to go tonight, right?
Yeah, the reason is if we have a lot of plans, but we have no parking, how can we attract more business come to downtown core and increase and booming our local economy and commercials?
Great, thank you for the question and comment. So the OPA 18.6, it does include some policies related to the city-owned parking and policies. If those lands were to be redeveloped where there's city-owned parking lots, we would want to protect the existing amount of public parking spaces. But in terms of a parking plan, I don't have information on that.
So yeah, please consider, because we don't as city, we don't expect our builders to put more parking for other publics, right? So this is our village core. We have a lot of business over there. I want the city to put a plan, because when we're doing the plan for next many years, from city perspective, what we can offer to attract business. So I'll leave this one to our city's hand. Please consider if we have fundings or capital budget, how can we improve the traffic and parking, especially over on our village area?
Thank you.
Yeah. My second question regarding to is really some extensions on the Elizabeth extension. So I was being engaged by the residents. So the Elizabeth Road extension on the Metro Mac, it might be crossing the property of certain residents. And because it's very close to the existing property, it might devaluate the property's value. So when we make our official plans, please consider the interests of our residents on both sides of the street as well. So we are planning a city development which should benefit the residents, not on the opposite way. Their house around $2 million after we finish our project and their real estate devalued. That's my second part. I could leave to the second round. I'll leave this one to Councillor Thompson if he has more questions.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, you're going to move that the motion to refer all comments back to staff, and you'll second?
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, the mayor. I would definitely like to second that. I do want to thank staff for the report and all the work they put into putting this together. Definitely like to thank all the delegates that took the time to present and to write in and provide their comments. This is a very unique area that we're talking about, and one where we do have the vision where we want the village in the city. And yes, certainly other municipalities have certainly been able to achieve that. Not every other municipality has a major highway running through the village in the city, that like we do, or be within a priority major transit station area either. So there's definitely going to be challenges that we'll have to take a look at. In particular, redevelopment that will complement our heritage preservation. That's probably going to be the biggest challenge. Obviously, the desire for more urban plazas, walkways, gardens, linear parks, those types of things. And speaking of the parks, I really think that we do have an opportunity here to capitalize on the city-owned property that we have at Major Mac and Yonge Street. So I'd like to just keep those things in mind. I do want to keep it brief. I know that there's going to be, we're really still at a point here where we want to get everybody's input. And again, I definitely appreciate the input we've received this far. So that's all my comments to this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I really want to thank all those who came out today to make their comments known. Certainly over the years, I was first elected to this council in '97, and it's been very clear for the residents in the old part of Richmond Hill and the center of Richmond Hill that there is no desire for significant densities to be on this portion of Yonge Street. And it can be done. I mean, we can't compare this to Unionville or Main Street Newmarket or other places, because those, no one's historical village is also situated on the most important transit and transportation corridor in the GTA, perhaps in Canada. So Yonge Street can only really be compared to Yonge Street. And if earlier I had said that if Yonge and 7 is the new Union Station and Yonge and 16th, Bloor and Yorkdale in the shopping area, then we unfortunately have no choice that Eglinton is Major Mackenzie. Major Mackenzie will be the next important east-west connection between Markham, Richmond, and Vaughan. It will be the next BRT and bus rapid transit. And we can't get away from the requirement by provincial and regional policy to have density there and south of Major Mackenzie. But if you look in Toronto and you look between Eglinton and York Mills, those residents demanded and have achieved and accomplished a very nice retail area without the density that you see in the rest of Yonge Street. And if you liken Major Mackenzie to Elgin Mills, as you know, Yonge Street between Eglinton and York Mills, you know, and you see in and around Lawrence Avenue, there's you know, very vibrant shopping and other things, but they don't have the density that you see in the rest of the city on Yonge Street. And then I guess Bernard's going to be our shepherd and Finch Avenue, but you know, we have the densities there. But I believe it can happen. The residents' desire can be accommodated, but I also think the past council did the right thing in repealing the downtown secondary plan. The plan didn't work, and you know, since its passage, not a single one. I could be wrong, but I don't think any of those properties received any significant improvements since the downtown secondary plan. The previous one in 2010 was passed, and what it did was sterilize any activity. So there has to be some understanding that there's economics that go in towards improving properties, and this official plan amendment has to respect the fact that density goes elsewhere on Yonge Street and elsewhere in Richmond Hill, and that's, you know, that's why we've allocated the number of people we have in the Richmond Hill Center and Yonge and 16th and Bernard. So we can insist on much lower densities in this area. I'm glad the new, you know, village core, it doesn't go south of Major Mackenzie. That you know, south of Major Mackenzie is a different story, but north of Major Mackenzie, within limits, we have to make a you know, we have to make this plan economically viable for properties to be improved, and that is going to mean some additional stories. I don't know how many, but 4 or 5 is what I'd like to see. But as was said, you know, on a single lot, the sizes that they are, you can't economically allow for proper parking and underground parking, but still have, you know, a 4-story building with very few units. So I think our staff has reached a very good compromise. We're getting there, but this official plan amendment, regarding the village core, I think it's going to take a lot of time, Mr. Mayor, and we still have lots of consultation to do.
Okay, thank you so much. Regional Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff, for report and everybody who has spoken and also written submission. And I believe a number of delegates are actually, when they're making delegation in the first item, probably touching on this one and also other matters we're talking about tonight for the OPA discussion. And I want to be very brief. Number one, I concur with the view I believe Councillor Tree mentioned, probably we are hearing from the business improvement area merchants about how to maintain or maybe actually enhance the vibrancy of this area, village core. And also my colleague Councillor Thompson make a good point, is unique area and historic village. And on that note, let me be clear. I've been saying it for now the 17th year. And actually the name of this area is no longer called Downtown Richmond Hill. It was downtown of the village, Heritage Village, while we are 750 years anniversary. The downtown of the city of Richmond Hill, the modern city of Richmond Hill, is in Yonge and 7 and Richmond Hill Center. Having said that, and I think that one of the delegates mentioned earlier and is referred a few times, the parking issue need to be addressed and need look at. And their suggestion of underground parking, I believe, and it's also talked about through wayfinding, better usage of the our Center of Performing Arts parking. I know it's always busy there, even during the daytime, but there's a potential to be working out some of the plans there. And one comment is also I'd like to touch on is about that. I think Councillor Thompson mentioned it. We do have actual city-owned parks in the area. And also we have information such as, like even plaques on the street to show, there's a heritage walk and that kind of thing. So insofar as a village core or local center, village within the city, those are the kind of enhancement we can help to promote about the bringing people to the area, assuming we have better plans for addressing the parking, whether it's underground or otherwise. And second point I just want to comment is on transition. And the boundary further north compared to previous plan, I think is something that is worth considering. We certainly witness a lot of change. So transitioning is very important. So not everything is necessarily what the developers want. However, we would have to really looking at how the whole area is transitioning itself. And so I think those are something need to be looked at. And I think I would leave it as that for this for now. And I think the area has the potential to be a vibrant, very good commercial use village core in our city of Richmond Hill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, we'll get a second round, but you want to do second round? Okay. Okay, I'll just make a few comments then. This is an interesting exercise tonight because we're taking a close look at 4 very different areas. I find that very interesting. I guess that's just me. But what I would say is this is probably the most unique area that we're going to be dealing with tonight, because I think that it's the area that requires the most precision when it comes to the planning of the area. The reality of the situation, and we've struggled with this for many years now. The reality of the situation is that the area is very, very constrained by very important and very established, well-known and character parts of our city on both the east side and Ward 2 and on the west side in Ward 4. And the reality is that there is limits to how big and how much density that can be put in here. I do appreciate the rationale and the thought and the work that's gone in with the staff to move from the 2010 plan to what we're seeing here today. And I think actually that given the change of circumstances from 2010, and given all the other things that have changed, I think it's very appropriate, the general direction that we're heading in, and the increased densities. I get it. Nobody wants the towers to be bigger and the density to be higher, but I think that it's actually appropriate. And I've always been of the idea that in order to see change in the downtown core, we need to see revitalization. And in order to see revitalization, we need to see redevelopment of a lot of these properties. And also we need to build in customers into that area. So we need buildings, in close proximity to Yonge Street on both sides of the village core area that are going to be the customers for the restaurants and the businesses that are in there. I have absolutely no argument with that. In fact, I think I've heard that commonly throughout my discussions that have happened here tonight, and also discussions I've had in years past. I think there needs to come up with some creative solutions, though, to that area, and some flexibility in the ability to allow some of these properties to be developed. But at the same time, I think there needs to be a very firm understanding that we can't be throwing out the protections that are going to negatively impact the existing communities in that area, or overload the traffic situation in that area, and so on. I do think that there were elements of the secondary plan which I'm really sorry that we have gone away because we repealed that plan. I get that the plan wasn't working together as a whole, and I fully respect that. But there were elements of that plan that really created this incredibly dynamic and unique downtown. It animated the backs of buildings. It put fountains and courtyards and so on in those places that people could enjoy. They could have, instead of having a patio right on Yonge Street, they could enjoy a patio in the back of the building where it's a little bit quieter and a little bit more unique. So I think we, again, have the exciting potential here to do something really fantastic in this area. But the reality also is that this area is unique. And one of the unique parts of this area is the remaining historic buildings that we see in this area. And we need to be very carefully enhancing that value, because it brings value for the properties once they redevelop. It's not just any old place. It's a very unique place. There will be no other place like it in the world, because it's what we have here in Richmond Hill. And we need to really leverage that, because if we don't, it's just going to be big and dense, and there's really no pull and attraction for people to want to come to that area. So I think the landowners in that area need to work together to make sure that we can leverage that. I've been spending a little bit more time lately in the city, in Toronto, and I've seen numerous examples lately where buildings are being, historic buildings are being taken down and new buildings are being built incorporating the old structures. And I'm tired of hearing that we can't do that in Richmond Hill, because we can, right? And there are buildings in that central core that really need to be brought back to their initial glory and to be representative as a part of our community, but at the same time building some density in there and making it a more dynamic and repurposed place. So I'm very excited about this. And I think, there's more work to be done. We're not at the finish line yet. I think some of the comments that were made by Mr. Chapnick about protecting the community are things that we should be looking at and considering. There may be barriers to being able to do all of those things, but I think we need to give it a very close look and make sure that we're being as creative as we can in the process. So anyway, I gone a little over time. I'm sorry, but we've had a request for second round by Councillor Tree and Councillor Thompson. So Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want adding a few items here as well. The first one is just as Mayor mentioned, the historical buildings. We have St. Mary Church over there. We have in that church there, both of them more than 100 years. So that's really city of Richmond Hill's start from point, right? As a heritage area, we need to remember those special areas. We need to keep those traditions for our city, not only our generation, maybe next generation, as a remarkable place for representing simple of Richmond Hill. So we need to keep those in mind. The second one I mentioned here is traffic. As why we think our staff planning or proposal this is 3 or FSI 3 or 2, because this unique situation here, right? If you look at the current traffic along the Metrimac, we have another go train areas, because we're going to intensify that areas. For now, if you're driving in the rush hour or maybe Saturday or Sunday along the Metrimac, how busy that intersection already? It's very challenging to cross anytime you want. Consider we're going to extend both areas, Yonge Street and Metrimac, also go to the station area. You can imagine how many cars will be in the street. Okay, so when we consider the plan, a visual plan, because we don't have more space to build up infrastructures to allow more cars on the street, what are we going to do, right? Either we extend or expanding our street along Yonge Street. Is that possible or not? I think it's a challenge. Or second one, we're reducing the traffic load. If public transit is available for us, for example, GO train or underground or whatever, will be available, and the walking distance is benefits, right? So far, I think based on the current situation, it's very challenging to intense the residential areas along the young area. So this is my understanding. Also, I want to ask the mayor. So I remember tomorrow we're going to have a meeting discussing the south of the beside the library, central library. I know we have a lot of space over there. I'm just thinking from the high level perspective, if we can build up more parking lot, either underground or whatever above ground, and holding more cars over there, because from distance perspective, it's also very close to our village core as well. So just put this idea to our city and stuff. If we have future budget capital budget, why we cannot building more public parkings, just easy up a little bit for the downtown core. In future, if we have more constructions on the downtown core, maybe people can park into the south side. We don't have yet, but I think future we better have that solution, right? And then at that time being, the traffic can be better and we have more space for people parking. We can revitalize the village core, build up more more parking space for residents and for visitors as well. That is only my personal opinion. The third one I was mentioning is I already booked a meeting with a brand for the village core associations. If anybody from either BIA or local residents or local business, also developer want to talk with me, my door is always open. Let's have meetings because the plan is the plan. We can have more inputs. I want residents from both residents, community, and also builders come to my office. Let's talk about it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just a couple of things. I do want to thank all my colleagues for their comments, and a couple of things surfaced that just gave me a couple of things that I wanted to get some clarification on. One of the comments was about the parks, and I did forget to mention that we do have a number of parks that are actually on the periphery of the boundaries here that we could certainly take advantage of. But speaking about the boundaries, one of the colleagues had mentioned something, and I think maybe we need to get some clarification on that, and particularly south of Major Mac. So if I could just get clarification from staff exactly what the boundaries south of Major Mac represent. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So OPA 18.6 proposes to redesignate the lands south of Major Mackenzie from downtown local center to a regional mixed use corridor. So in that, that would create the village local center would just be north of Major Mackenzie Drive.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No, it's well, we're at council now. We'll just finish that off. I just wanted to make one more quick little comment that I'd forgotten about too, is that, it's important to remember in that area, the city has done significant investments. We've got the Richmond Hill Center for the Performing Arts, which I think at the time was about $30 million. We've revitalized the Terry Fox Park, which was called Ransom Park. And we've also revitalized the post office. So those are important foundational investments to set the stage for the revitalization of the downtown area. And I appreciate you reminding me, Councillor, tomorrow morning we'll be having a committee of the whole meeting. And I am bringing forward a motion that will ask staff to take a look at how we can develop the civic park around the library lands and revitalize those and make those a real destination for people across Richmond Hill that we can be proud of. And again, that's the reason I'm mentioning that in this context, is that this is yet another investment that we're looking at making in the downtown area. So I think we need to see some reinvestment in some of the privately owned properties in that area so that we can get the revitalization ball rolling. And so I think this is a very important conversation that we're having. And I look forward to the outcome of this when it comes back, hopefully in the fall or sometime shortly after that. So I think that's it for comments. All those in favor of the motion, refer everything back to staff. Opposed, that carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is we're going to be dealing with the Newkirk Local Center, OPA 18.7. And we've got Andrew Crawford, Policy Planner, to present that plan to us. Andrew?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Crawford, as just mentioned, and I will be presenting a brief overview of OPA 18.7 regarding the Newkirk Local Center. Next slide, please. So the intent of OPA 18.7 is to plan for the Newkirk Local Center over the long term and to conform with regional and provincial policies regarding land use planning near major transit stations. The draft OPA proposes a vision for the local center and includes detailed land use policies and schedules, which together will satisfy the city's requirements surrounding secondary planning. Next slide, please. In terms of vision, OPA 18.7 proposes to update the vision for the area to be an affordable, livable, mixed-use community anchored by a transit station that connects commuters from across the city. The role of this local center is that it will not only act as a commuter connector, but also as a hub for commercial and employment activity that serves the neighboring residential development surrounding it. In accordance with the city structure and intensification hierarchy, the Newkirk area is presently classed as a local development area. OPA 18.7 proposes to elevate this classification and identify the area as a local center. Next slide, please. OPA 18.7 proposes to create 3 new character areas within the Newkirk Local Center. These character areas will enable policies to be customized to the unique characteristics of each portion of the local center. For example, the northern character area will contain the majority of the intensification and growth, as well as the jobs that will be locating in this area. The southern character area will be a low-rise transitional area, and the western character area will continue to be a mid-rise apartment neighborhood with opportunities for infill. Next slide, please. The Newkirk Local Center is located within a protected major transit station area. Because this, OPA 18.7 will add minimum densities and other policies to ensure that a minimum target of 150 residents and jobs per hectare is achieved over the long term, which is in line with provincial and regional policy requirements. At full build out, the local center is anticipated to accommodate up to 350 residents and jobs per hectare overall, or roughly 7,500 residents and about 3,600 jobs. And again, this is over the long term, which we anticipate to be in a time horizon of 30 or more years from now. Next slide, please. So OPA 18.7 will be modifying the land use schedule in the city's official plan. The area outlined in red on the screen is the proposed local center boundary. The area today is already designated as an intensification area, mostly under either the local development area designation or the employment corridor or area designations. So this OPA will be carrying forward most of the land use permissions that are already permitted by the local development area designation for various types of mixed uses. New permissions to add major office and major retail uses within the northern character area are also proposed by 18.7. Next slide, please. So the OPA has also proposed a couple updates regarding policies on built form. Height limits are tailored to each character area. For example, the northern character area is proposed to have a height limit of 20 stories, where the majority of the growth and intensification in this area is expected to occur. The southern character area is proposed to have 10 stories along Major Mackenzie, dropping down to 4 stories as it transitions to the surrounding neighborhood. And the western character area is expected to maintain its existing apartment buildings with opportunities for infill development of up to 15 stories. Density is proposed to change from the current approach of development blocks towards a more site-specific approach through the addition of a density schedule, and density permissions have been aligned with the height permissions. Next slide, please. So OPA 18.7 proposes a number of new public realm elements in order to provide amenities, open space, and connectivity for residents and workers, and help create a complete community in this area. So, for example, a new public street is recommended on the west side of Newkirk to maintain access to the GO Station platform and to provide access to new developments. New and improved paths and connections, as well as a crossing of the sea and rail corridor, will improve access for residents to amenities and nearby parks. And an expansion to Essex Parkhead is proposed, as well as new urban plazas and open spaces that will be throughout the area, which will accompany new development as it occurs. Otherwise, because there is a lot of nearby parks to the northwest and south, this reduces the need to provide new dedicated parkland directly within the local center. Next slide, please. And we're almost at the end. In terms of next steps, following tonight's meeting, staff will be providing opportunities for meetings with stakeholders, go over any questions and comments they may have. Over the summer, staff will be analyzing all the feedback we've received and make modifications to the draft policies as necessary. And then the OPAs will be brought forward and will be finalized and hopefully brought forward to council for adoption this fall. Next slide. And that's the end of the presentation. Our recommendation is that the presentation and the staff report be received and that all comments be referred back to staff. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. We have a number of folks as delegations. Lo and behold, we have Mr. Gursky. Mr. Gursky, welcome again.
I'm not sure if this is a benefit or a sin. Can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
Back in the day when I was in architecture, I was working for Abraham Seidler and had the privilege of designing all the washroom details for Ontario Place. So it shows you where I was in the hierarchy. But in the evenings, I had a chance to work with Mr. Seidler and a number of other top leading architects in Toronto. And we did responses to competitions all over the world. And we love doing it. And I'm going to go back to the last presentation. I'm looking at Richmond Hill, the village of Richmond Hill. This is a perfect spot to really look at an international competition that you set criteria with the landowners and with the staff and see what can come back with the guarantee that the winning proposal will be the one that would be built. Now that's a big ask for the developers. And it's a big push against the OPA because I see that there's some disconnect there. But that's one area that I think you could really come up with. If you want something that's world class, you make it an international competition, and you'd be surprised with the various schools of architecture. You'd be surprised with the various architectural firms and urban planners that would lift themselves up to respond to something like that once you set the criteria. End of comment.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Okay, I think our next two delegates have left, so I'm assuming they're not Priya and Barbara, but we have our fourth delegate is Michael Theodoros. Michael, I see you coming onto the screen there and you're unmuted, so hello and welcome. You have got 5 minutes to address council.
You guys can hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so yeah, last night I actually provided a submission for this particular Newkirk area. It's one I'm very familiar with. We've resided in Richmond Hill since the mid-70s. A lot of changes have occurred. Now, the one takeaway early on, I would say, is I think we've got to go very slow here. I think the main impetus for the intensification that's being mentioned here is the longtime Richmond Hill GO station. But when I was doing my research, I came across the Metrolinx GO expansion document that actually shows that no expansion is actually planned here, mainly for 7 reasons, most of them actually related to infrastructure. The key thing being the ownership of the CN rail line. So when I was looking at the expansion document, if you look at my submission, you can see I outline where I actually saw this document. So the last point, there was 7 points they talked about also issues to do with flooding in Don Valley. We remember that time when people got trapped on the train, had to be rescued. A lot of these issues are long-standing and have never been solved by the government. Same with the rail track. They're now, before they used to say all-day two-way GO train with service would be coming Richmond Hill. This is now shifted to increased service. So they've now shifted from this. Some of that I think is due to the fact that now TTC will be expanding up north, and that will cannibalize riders. So the whole thing, the whole rationale for making this big intensification at this point in time, I think is actually wrong. And I noticed actually looking through some of the planning documents that were provided, there was some kind of back and forth actually between the region and here about whether the station should actually be an MTSA. And at the end, they decided to drop it in. So they've got this 150 per hectare people and job thing. Yet if you look at that document, there's other stations within York Region, Rutherford, Maple Station, King City, that either have the similar 150 per hectare or lower, and yet they actually have all-day service or superior service. So I think this is a big issue that we need to look at. If the province wants to impose these strict guidelines for growth, then they should be actually investing in the Richmond Hill line. You can go any day over to the GO station, plenty of cars there. People are using the service. It's kind of funny that the new shiny stations on the line are now in Gormley and also in Bloomington. And this longstanding one in Newkirk is the same as it's always been. Other issue, and you guys kind of heard loud and clear on May 16th when there was a high density project before you, traffic is really bad in this area. So the level of intensification that they want to add to this particular area is only going to make that worse, not better. You've got, I was actually surprised to see maybe stories as high as 20 stories in this area. And then you're going to have future GO ridership increases and then more residential development. Now, I've heard some of the message here, you know, go slow, it's a 20-30 year plan, but already you have a project on Norfolk off Major Mackenzie that's asking for 14 and 16 stories. So there's no, unless there's any kind of speed bumps that the planning department can build in to say, we'll allow the development when the infrastructure comes on board, you're going to see a flurry of proposals. I think the last time I was here on May 16th, I came across a document with like 50 pages of proposals that are already here. As soon as the ink dries, there's going to be no waiting for any developers in the area. They're going to jump on whatever the new planning proposal is. And meanwhile, poor Richmond Hill riders like myself, now they've actually only got hourly service here 3 times in the morning, 4 at night, and no hope for all-day GO service. So I think you got to look at the that expansion document and kind of demand for the province, the feds, the municipalities to actually say, build in some kind of condition that we will actually take on this development if you actually put the infrastructure in place. The CN line has been an issue for over 20 years. They could have got it much cheaper than it would be now. We've waited all this time and there's no improvement. And the thing with Metrolinx is, they actually run a good business, but they're very savvy business people. They will not put anything extra online unless they know that there's actual cost benefit there. And again, if you look at that expansion document, you'll see density is actually the lowest factor that they were looking at. Everything else was based on infrastructure. And the other thing I was just going to say is, along with traffic, also business part, it's hard to get a handle on what's 150 per hectare. Like I know there's an Apotex at Alga Mills and Newkirk. What does that look like? What does Staples on Leslie look like? What does Richmond Hill headquarters look like? I think people need to get a better sense of what do these 150 per hectare figures mean based on current buildings, and what would they look like in the future? Well, sorry, I've gone over time there.
No problem. No, thank you, Mr. Theodoros. We appreciate your input tonight, and I did read your letter. We have received that. It's in the package, so thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No problem. Okay, so that exhausts our speaker list. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this application at Newkirk? Okay, come on up, sir. If you just could do the name thing again.
Ron Birch, I'm 299 Elmwood Avenue. I'm within the south portion of this KDA. I applaud that you're changing the limits to medium density in that area. That's pretty much what and also that you're upholding the 45-degree plane. The one question I sort of had from the last meeting about the 45-degree plane was the planner mentioned that it'd be from across the street. My property's within the KDA. So does that mean that I don't get the 45-degree plane from my property line?
Okay, this is not really a time for question and answers,
Oh,
but what
okay.
what I'd suggest that I would suspect that you have other questions that you should have answered. So I would recommend that you reach out to the ward councillor, which in your case is Ward 5, that's Councillor Silovitz, and also our staff, because they, you know, if you're one of the landowners in that area, you've got questions and we have answers. So I think we need to connect you to make sure that we can give you a detailed explanation of that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just one question, comment. I guess it's about the previous KDA. The vitalization of village of Richmond Hill has changed since City Hall has moved from there to here. Just if you want to revitalize it, maybe an idea would be to move it back.
That's good. No, I hear you. You've obviously lived here a long time.
Then I just want to reiterate about crime in a high density area. My neighbors have been victims of crime. I've been a victim of crime. As population increases in without jobs, then crime increases. It'd be nice I applaud the idea of having more industry businesses. I think Canada needs more industry than maybe to make stuff, but that's anyways. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Okay, anybody else in the audience? Okay, seeing none. So I'll bring this back to council at this point. This is in Councillor Silovitz and Thompson's ward, but in fairness to Councillor Thompson, you got the second straw the last time, so you can have the first straw this time.
Thank you very much. Through you, the mayor, I'd certainly like to thank staff for preparing this report and bringing it forward. I'd like to thank all the delegates that have certainly written in and have delegated today. There is one quick comment that I would like to make. I'm not going to make it as a form of question. It'll just be a comment. And this is something that could apply to any one of the OPAs here. And in the previous one in the village core, one of the bordering streets there, where you're butting up against a well-established neighborhood, and a gentleman here had spoken about the angular plane. It's actually at a 30-degree angular plane, one of the streets on in the village core. And I've heard what Mr. Theodore had said about Norfolk, and I think that could be a classic example of one where we might want to consider a 30-degree angular plane when you're talking about well-established neighborhoods that are abutting up against these projects. So that's my comment, and I'll be happy to move the motion to receive the report and have all comments referred back to staff.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Silovitz, you'd like to second that and you have some comments? Go ahead. Councillor Silovitz, do you have any comments?
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Thank you. Thank you to staff for bringing this forward to us this evening and for speaking with Councillor Thompson and I prior, as you've done with all of us prior to this evening. Your input is so important here because we get it from the professional perspective. I want to thank the residents that stepped forward as well. And thank you, Mr. Theodoros, for an excellent presentation with a lot of information. The one comment I want to make with regards to the railway line is this. We share the railway line with CN Rail. It's not just a commuter line for GO Transit. It's also a major, major freight line. And one of the reasons why we only have specific intervals of service to the Newkirk station is because of the freight. So I would urge all residents, anybody who wishes to see a change occur here, you must speak with our provincial representatives. We have 2 MPPs in Richmond Hill, and your comments to them and to the provincial government would be very, very well received as far as I'm concerned, because it's about, that's their purview. It's not ours. As much as we would like to perhaps correct that, we can't. That CN rail line is a shared line. And when you look at the Rutherford station, that's a completely different station. That is a transit line only. So that's something I really urge everybody to discuss with our MPPs, because that is their purview. It's not ours. Would we like to have more service coming to and from the Newkirk station? Of course we would. There's no question we would, but it's not up to us. And the last thing I just want to remark on is the Norfolk application that is in front of us right now. It's a part of Ward 5. And yes, we still have concerns about its heights and densities, but it is still in the process of being managed and looked at by our planning staff. And as we move forward through that process, we'll see how or if things can be amended for that particular application, which also presents a lot of complications and a lot of concern for most residents who live in that particular area of the Southern Character district. So I want to thank everybody again. We continue to move through this process, and there'll be more discussion that can be had publicly, and I look forward to that, and I look forward to everybody's input, and I will gladly second the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks so much. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another very important proposed official plan amendment here. It's very ambitious of our, to have 4 of these discussions tonight. I don't want to take too much time. People in Oak Ridges are waiting. It's after 10, but I will say this area represents really one of our best opportunities to achieve that housing pledge that this council has made, that pledge to get 27,000 homes in what is now a remaining 7.5 years. I think Mr. Theodoros said it right. Once we get this OPA in place, before the ink is dry, we're gonna have some real applications with people with real intentions of getting shovels in the ground on an already existing transit corridor. I think Newkirk and Gormley represent the best opportunity to provide some housing alternatives in the short term, rather than the other KDAs that have a longer built up vision. But I agree with Councillor Silovitz that a lot of lobbying has to be done with the province. There needs to be an improvement of the service on this GO train line. But I actually think there is an intention to do so. By Metrolinx, the lengths they went to build that Bloomington station, it's beautiful. It's the best parking lot in the country, I think. Yeah, but they've also done improvements at Bethesda, and of course, Gormley is relatively recent. And if they were abandoning the prospect of that being a commuter rail, they just simply wouldn't have done that. I'm hearing that there is some progress on those obstacles in the city to twinning portions of this of that rail line, which would give us proper all-day two-way service. I'm really hopeful of that. And then Mr. Mayor, as I said earlier, again, above ground with the subway along the rail corridor to get from Highway 7 to 16th and then again to Major Mackenzie. The CEO, Phil Verster, was publicly stated that he thought the rail line, the existing GO station, may be the new Finch station, that ultimately the subway will get to Major Mackenzie. And then, of course, the region has a very aggressive program for the next phase of Viva to be an east-west PRT connection on Major Mackenzie. So I think we're looking at the right place, and it has to be done properly. So the way this OPA is implemented has to have the utmost consideration for those established, mature neighborhoods, single-family neighborhoods that are going to undergo a significant change from what they've seen historically. But Richmond Hill planners in the 70s identified this as a density area, and in the 70s and 80s they saw that this is an area that can handle some population growth, and I think it is. But all those traffic considerations have to be dealt with very sensitively, and we have to ensure that Major Mackenzie flows properly, and there's not a worsening of, as we said, an existing traffic concern in this area. So just add that to the stack of comments here tonight and for this official OP. But I do want everyone to understand that we have an official plan update committee. We as a municipality together are making these proposed changes, and it's done in consultation. And it's your feedback that's driving these official plan changes, because it's this council is facilitating an application to update our own official plan, not precipitated by landowners. This is a city-run initiative in cooperation with residents, and today begins the formal portion for this area, but the consultation continues and is ongoing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sri.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I only have one maybe 2 points here. The first one is regarding traffic. So far, by now, if you drive along the Major also Bayview intersection, and does not matter when you can drive there, it's already crowded. The reason is here we have once elementary school here. Also, we have Bayview secondary school. So we have a lot of the traffic is during the daytime and nighttime. So adding those new residents here, definitely going to be adding more traffic load here. If you look at the south side, right? If you want to get out here, the only path you can go through is Major Road, is the Major Mac. So we do facing the challenges here. I would recommend the staff to look at the traffic conditions. The second part is going to be north side, because north side, if you drive along the Newkirk, as we all know, Newkirk is only one lane. In the southern, in the future, we have more residents here. Consider Newkirk's expansion, because one lane both sides will be very challenged to get out from here. Also, north side, we have a major road is Agam Mills. So we mentioned many times, a railway cross the Agam Mills. If you drive in the morning, if you see any GO trains or the freight trains there, you might pipe up for 10 or 20 minutes, just cross one point. So consider that one. I think from region perspective, the underground pass along the Agam Mills should be considered and should be speeded up. Otherwise, if we have more residents here, if we go to Costco shopping, for example, right? If we go to Costco shopping, go to eat in the restaurant along the Agam Mills, it will be very difficult. Adding more burdens here. So yeah, that's just my comment regarding the traffic. Also, regarding to the living environment, consider this really area. We only have a Walmart Smart Center nearby. And if you want to live there, you don't want to walking for a distance, it creates more traffic. Maybe the local restaurant or local supermarket or local recreation center should be considered. I haven't seen the details yet regarding to the multi-purpose usages. Is there any specific definitions regarding to this area can have more commercial areas? This way people don't need driving far away. This way they can just walk into the supermarket or whatever nearby, or maybe underground, because this is a GO train station. I'm assuming in the future, more underground parking might be available, right? That's time being, we can consider underground community centers or supermarket or Dollarama, etc. That's my thought.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll just make my comments very brief. I appreciate this plan. I think we're on the right track on that as well. I guess the two parts that I think are most interesting about this is that, we have to figure out a way to redevelop the GO train parking lot, but maintain the parking. And I think that's really where the opportunity is to build, residential in that parking lot. But we obviously need the parking for the GO train facility as well. But I think the most concern that I have with this plan is the fact that the south part of this area is within a residential area. And I think we just need to do everything we can to make sure that we're being careful on the transition between what we're planning on building and what's there already. It is an established neighborhood that needs to be treated carefully. So, and I think, again, we're on the right track on that, but I just would urge staff to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's on that. Okay, so we have a motion in front of us then to receive all comments, put them back to staff. All those in favor? Okay, opposed, that carries unanimously. And our next item, and the last one of the evening, is OPA 18.8, the Oak Ridges Local Center. The presentation is by Megan Kobold. Again, thank you, Megan. Go ahead.
Thank you again, and good evening, everyone again. I'm going to present the overview of draft OPA 18.8 regarding the Oak Ridges Local Center. Next slide, please. The intent of OPA 18.8 is to address matters that are important to the long-term planning of the Oak Ridges Local Center and to conform to updates to the York Region Official Plan and provincial plans. OPA 18.8 proposes updates to the city's official plan with detailed planning policies and schedules for the area. And in doing so, it also satisfies the OP's secondary plan requirements. Next slide, please. This area in Oak Ridges is identified as a local center according to our city structure and intensification hierarchy. This means the Oak Ridges Local Center will accommodate intensification at a scale less than the Richmond Hill Center, key development areas, and generally less than the abutting regional corridor. This local center is envisioned to be an active community with a modern town feel, located on the moraine that's green, connected to nature, clean and safe with a walkable and sustainable main street. Next slide, please. In York Region's 2022 official plan, it identified the segment of Yonge Street between Bloomington and 19th Avenue, which runs through a portion of the local center as a regional corridor. York Region directs for intensification along these corridors and that they function as urban main streets and be planned with a compact, mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly, and transit-supportive built form. As this area is along a future bus rapid transit route, the minimum density target is 160 people and jobs per hectare. OPA 18.8 provides policies to achieve this target and vision for a viable mixed-use urban main street over the long term. Similar to the other centers, at full build-out, which is a time horizon of 30 plus years, the local center policies propose to accommodate 290 people and jobs per hectare, which roughly translates to approximately 13,000 residents and 4,700 jobs. Next slide, please. In terms of land use, OPA 18.8 proposes to continue to permit a mix of land uses, including both residential and non-residential uses. It requires non-residential uses like commercial and retail at grade along Yonge Street. It also proposes to require development to retain or exceed the existing amount of gross leasable floor area of retail, commercial, or office use in new development. And it also encourages office use to promote job creation and economic development. Collectively, these proposed changes are to support an active streetscape and also provide opportunities for employment and services nearby. Next slide, please. OPA 18.8 carries forward and builds on existing policies in the official plan related to built form and urban design. New development will still be required to enhance the ecological character of the moraine through landscaping and design, such as using low impact development techniques. Transition down to the surrounding neighborhood will be addressed through the application of angular plane requirements and permissions regarding height and density and others such as supporting human scale urban design. The proposed height for most of the local center ranges between 2 to 6 stories and would support the development of primarily low and mid-rise buildings. The area between King Road and Black Forest Drive in Worthington is proposed to allow for up to 8 stories along the Yonge Street frontage. The schedule on the right identifies maximum site densities to support the proposed height permissions and are generally higher along the Yonge Street frontage. Next slide, please. OPA 18.8 proposes policies to enhance the public realm and includes a corresponding schedule which identifies proposed cycling facilities and also identifies new streets located east of Yonge Street at Coons Road, west of Yonge Street, north and south of Maple Grove Avenue, and also south of King Road. It also encourages new development to provide interconnections between properties and requires sidewalks to be provided on both sides of any new public streets. OPA 18.8 also identifies proposed new parks, including local parks, a community park, and a linear park. The creation of urban plazas are also encouraged to enhance the park system. Next slide, please. And in terms of next steps, like the other centers following tonight's meeting, staff will be providing opportunities for meetings with stakeholders to go over any feedback. And over the summer, staff will analyze and synthesize the feedback and make any modification to the draft policies if necessary before they're brought to council for adoption in the fall. And again, the recommendation is that this presentation and staff report be received and that all comments be referred back to staff.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And so we have a couple of delegations signed up as well. We have our friend Mike Gursky. Oh, he's not here? Oh, must be his bedtime. And Suzanne Payne is the next person. Thank you for waiting, Miss Payne. I appreciate your patience. You don't get frequent flyer points, but you get the longest waiting, most patient person points.
My name is Suzanne Payne. I am Vice President of Beaufort Hills Homeowners Association and past president. I was very active in the OPA 129 process and involved in the subsequent OMB hearing, which went on for quite a time. I've lived in Richmond Hill, Ward 1 for 39 years. On behalf of the Beaufort Hills Homeowners Association, in a neighborhood of 225 lots of record located on the west side of Yonge Street, we thank the Richmond Hills staff and council for their efforts to work with the public to carry this process forward. We acknowledge the work of staff and council on the Richmond Hill official plan and amendments towards a livable Richmond Hill with environment first caps, continuing to guide all aspects of the official plan. I'd like to take this opportunity to bring your attention to some key elements of our written submission and elaborate in the time available on some important points. With regard to extension of the Oak Ridges Local Center. Among the OPA 18.8 amendments is one to extend Oak Ridge's local center north of Black Forest, Worthington, along Yonge Street to Bloomington. The current maximum building height in the Oak Ridge's local center is 4 stories. As detailed, well, I'm not going to get too much detail. OPA 18.8 is looking to increase this limit to 6 stories in the extended area and to 8 stories in the current area below Black Forest and Worthington. This gateway area to the northern part of Richmond Hill, which features kettle lakes, natural corridors for wildlife on this crest of the Oak Ridges moraine, is unique. I believe we have a responsibility to future generations to preserve and protect these unique features to the best of our ability. Once gone, they're never recoverable. Why not make the gateway to Richmond Hill a celebration of the gems in the area? The tree canopy, the green space, the natural corridors, Lake Wilcox, Lake St. George, Bond Lake, Jefferson Forest, and the headlands of the Humber River. Why not? Instead, it seems we're preparing the guidelines for a multi-story buildings, blocking any views of green spaces and paving over the natural filtration of the Oak Ridges moraine and hiding what this part of Richmond Hill is all about. I would love to cross Bloomington in 20 years and see a distinct change in the landscape, not too different from what I see now along Yonge Street, and know immediately that I'm in a treasured area of Richmond Hill that has always put the environment first and protected its unique natural features on the Oak Ridges moraine. There's no sound reason to increase the 4-story limit on buildings in the area north of Black Forest and Worthington. On the tree canopy, recently the owner of a property at 39 Beaufort Hills Road obtained a permit to cut down 100 trees, most of them living. He's in the process of demolishing the existing home on the property, quadrupling the footprint to 12,000 square feet, close to the maximum allowable limit of the bylaw governing the area. Should the city planners have foreseen this kind of action as we were doing bylaws? I expect he paid a lot of money for his permit in lieu of replacing the trees. And I'm just wondering what happens to this cash in lieu payment. Does it actually go towards planting trees in the area, in the parks, in the natural corridors? I'm not sure about that. Climate action, there was a description of low impact development technologies at the recent open house, wherein it was explained to me that it was a tough sell on the developers, and these gravel swales capture 0.5 millimeters of rainfall. This is less than your average storm. So how is that going to handle the impacts of climate change, where flooding is going to be a big problem for all of us as we pave over everything that would pull in the drainage? I thank you very much for listening, and all the best.
Okay, thanks a lot, Suzanne. I appreciate it. And thank you again for your patience in waiting. So next person on our list is Howard Doty. Howard, welcome. And again, thank you for your patience in waiting. This is probably past your bedtime, right?
Not a problem. The good news is that there have been a number of speakers before me, and they have covered amply and ably about 95% of what I was going to say. The bad news is that it allows me to focus on one other thing. I do think, however, it might be useful just to take a look at a couple of statistics drawn from Census Canada. You may be familiar with this, but I think it needs to be pressed home. In 1951, the total population of Richmond Hill was 2,200 people. In 1961, it was 16,500. In 71, 32,500. And now in excess of 200,000. So the addition of another 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people, while interesting, isn't unprecedented. But that's what's happening above ground. I'm interested in what's happening underneath the ground. The Oak Ridges Moraine is not just a pretty set of valleys and hills and treed lots. It is absolutely essential for the entire waterscape of not only the Toronto area, but also the area heading north. We are in a situation where the three major rivers through Toronto are have their origins in this area, as well as rivers heading north to Lake Simcoe and to Georgian Bay. The moraine is an extraordinary geological facility. It controls, cleanses, regenerates water. When we pave it over, it's gone. And to have the kind of excessive building anywhere on the moraine is, I think, an assault on nature, and nature is not forgiving. Maybe not in the next 10 years or 20, but in the time of our children and grandchildren. As far as the specific area in Beaufort Hills and across from Beaufort Hills, the idea that this would be, even in the most fantastic of utopian schemes, a walkable area where you could go from your home and stroll down to a greengrocer's or a flower shop is absurd. When Suzanne was talking about the home that has been raised now and preparing for a 12,000 square foot house, I'm reminded of the fact that the only other development plans in the area that have been accepted are for the severance of a single lot and the building of 2 or even 3 new houses, each one of which will sell for minimum $200,000, maybe $250,000. So if anybody talks about affordable housing, sorry, this isn't where it's happening. I'd like to just say, in addition to what Suzanne was saying, that as far as the development proposals, we are being told not that there's going to be a 20, 30, 40-year planning period, that the document, the official plan, will be flexible, a living document, but that the applications for development from Bloomington all the way south to King Road and so on are already piling up. We might not have the time that we are said to have to make the adjustments. And I just urge you, please, take the long-term environment into consideration. I think I've told you before that when I moved to Oak Ridges in 1984, the planning staff guaranteed on a stack of whatever they took seriously that the top maximum population for Ward 1 would be 6,500 people. That the environment could not would not, but could not sustain any more than that. We now have over 40,000. I don't know how many are planned for this particular project, but if it were to be 50, 60, 70, it is all too much. And the environment must be taken first. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Howard. Okay, I think we've got the next 2 people are not here. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak at this time? Okay, Mr. Evans.
Good evening, Your Worship. Just a very quick statement. I'm here on behalf of the owner of 13564 Yonge Street, which is a property that is the southwest corner of Coons Road and Yonge Street. My client has sent in a letter to council under separate cover, but I'd just like to add a few comments. As you may or may not know, there's an application pending, and it has been pending since 2021 to permit an 8-story apartment building there. So as this relates, that would not be in conformity with the suggested heights and densities of the new or the draft official plan. So I'm asking that this particular location be considered for 8 stories and 3 to 3.5 FSI. In this particular case, the project has been designed so it meets all of the, I'll say, the standard requirements. There's excess parking, angular planes are met, setbacks from the interior community, and it frames the Yonge Street corridor. And as you just heard from the town or the city's planner, Yonge Street's a regional corridor. It does function as a regional corridor now and will function for the foreseeable future as a regional corridor. And they should be considered similar to that as other corridor locations south of this site. So that's my only comment, Your Worship, that staff consider this particular site and its history and as far as a policy context.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none. I know we got to get before 11 o'clock or we have to have a motion. Do you want to just do the motion just in case? I need a motion to extend past 11 just in case. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Davidson, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Just in case. Councillor Davidson, this is in your ward. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, staff, for your report, and thank you to my neighbors who came and waited. And we've talked at length about these issues, and I've talked at length to staff. I think there's no doubt that Ward 1 is not like the other wards. And as we see higher, bigger densities in other places in Richmond Hill, I think it's imperative that we save the gem that is Ward 1, keep the green spaces. I can tell you with 100%, I can 100% confirm that Oak Ridges is already the destination for many residents who want to walk a trail, want to come outside all year round. There's people there, and not just from Richmond Hill. So I think it worries me to raise densities, in particular, young Bloomington moving towards the 404. Even in areas that aren't part of this OP, including the Gormley area where it's designated an MTSA, but the truth is there's 4 trains in the morning and 4 trains at night. And I've told staff that I would like to keep densities low. I would like us to recognize that we don't know what's going to happen with the climate, and the fact that this area is a catch basin for drinking water. We saw a long semi-drought here last month. We have to consider the environment, and I will continue to work for that. That said, I don't want to make false promises to residents because 8 stories was approved in this area by the last council. And we always have to consider how defensible some of these applications are, but I feel I'm on the side of environment. I will try to keep densities low. I honestly think this is not a high, we can talk about it being a transit corridor. The truth is you can get on the bus at Bloomington, you can get on at Regatta, King. It's not high density, it's not high speed transit. There's no express buses. It probably will be, but it isn't now. So I would like to treat Oak Ridges as the gem that I think it is. I think it will serve us as a green space for all residents of Richmond Hill. And in the future, if we see great expansion of mass transit, which aren't in the works yet, we'll adjust accordingly. So thank you for my neighbors. Again, I know we all want the environment to be taken into consideration. And I do believe that Ward 1 is not like the others. So I've given those comments to staff more than once, and thank you.
Thank you. And I feel like you wanted to make a motion to refer all comments back to staff, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
So I need a seconder for that. Councillor Thompson? Did you want to speak?
No further comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from council? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry, Regional Local Councillor Chan, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the 2 delegates who are certainly staying behind, as the mayor said, maybe past some of our bedtime. I concur with the delegates, particularly the first one, Ms. Payne, and also the local councillor. Oak Ridges is very unique. Well, Richmond has a number of unique places that we mentioned earlier, like the village local core, but it's certainly the connection to the nature, the character of the particular Oak Ridges that have this long established neighborhoods. And I think it's a real challenge looking at particularly that Yonge Street as a regional corridor. Like you mentioned a number of times in report, having Yonge and Bloomington as a gateway. But being a gateway could also have a different characteristic compared to, let's say, the Southern Gateway on Yonge and 7. So my comment would be that some of the particular unique features of Oak Ridges, then I'm sure the local council will continue to advocate for doing the best and while enhancing the potential, the ward in Oak Ridges, but it also incorporates the kind of features that to be maybe streetscape wise in the gateway, as I mentioned, Yonge, Bloomington, and those are something that I certainly hear the residents and I hear the local councillor, and also at the regional level, anything I could help, then certainly would like to work together with residents there as well as local councillor to achieve the best that really, to the best we can, retain and preserve the character of the area there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got, let's see here. Next on my speaker list is Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments will be brief. I see a lot of similarities with the village core area and this in this area. We've got, Yonge Street's a challenge. It's a major transportation corridor. My preference would be to work with landowners in the community to create, in this case, it doesn't have the historical buildings that need to be accommodated. There's an opportunity for a really vibrant, modern Yonge Street frontage. In terms of, Oak Ridges in general, it is protected. There's over 1,000 acres of protected lands. Long stretches of Yonge Street can't be built on, but our staff's identified the areas that it's in an urban envelope. It's similar to the center of Yonge, the village core. Residents have expressed a desire to not have high density here. We are pushing density into portions of Richmond Hill where we shouldn't have to put that much density in Oak Ridges and in the village core, and we can defend that because we're absorbing overall the population the growth that's required more than our share. There's no question. In York Region, we're absorbing more than our share of population growth. That's a lot of it's driven by Yonge Street, but as a community, there's consensus on where it should be and where it shouldn't be. And Oak Ridges is where it's not desired, but we still want conditions in place for a more pedestrian friendly, modern, vibrant, slightly improved, main street there in Oak Ridges. So it's a balancing act. I know that our staff's doing a really good job delineating it, and there's a lot more work to be done, but there's a lot of protections in place. These urban areas are urban areas. They're pavement today, pavement tomorrow. We will put in ultra modern techniques to control storm water and be the have a very minimal impact on the environment. I'm confident in that, and we're not opening up any new areas. We're doing a little bit of intensification on that corridor where most of the population is flanking Yonge Street. That is a good public transit service that comes down Yonge Street, and that's where the growth should be. We can get affordable options on Yonge Street, close to those bus stations, and I think our staff's on the right track, and we just need to continue to hear from the public, in Oak Ridges and other places, and maybe just have an earlier meeting next time for people. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to all who spoke. Your passion for this unique area, you are correct, of Richmond Hill resonates with all of us. And to the local councillor, Councillor Davidson, you're absolutely correct. We are dealing with a different area of Richmond Hill, and it does require different thought, greater thought. I agree with Mr. Doherty that we have to protect, and Ms. Payne, thank you very much for your presentation. We must do everything we can within our power to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Greenbelt areas. There's no question about that. It's I'll die on that sword, quite frankly. We will protect it, and we will do, as a municipality, we will do everything we possibly can to ensure that the Oak Ridges Moraine remains as pristine as it should be. However, when you're talking about where should the density go, I agree with Regional Local Councillor DePaula. I always ask the question, if not there, where? If not here, where? And I think that goes for the proposal for Bloomington and Young. If we're not, and as Regional Local Councillor DePaula said, if we don't concentrate that around the Young Street transit corridor, which is a transit corridor because it's a vehicular transit corridor, it's not only public transit. So if we don't concentrate what we need to look at as intensification or densification for that northern side of Young Street, where else would we put it? So I understand why something that is being proposed there is, in my assumption, would be the best place for it to go. I certainly wouldn't want to see it anywhere else in Ward 1. And I think we should be thankful that the application appears to be for a mid-rise and not a high-rise. So for that, thank you to the applicant. And the other thing I could mention with regards to that particular concern, because obviously it is a concern for everybody, is that the applicant for that particular location has got an opportunity to actually show us architecturally and land use planning wise what can be done with a piece of land on Young Street that's not within the intensification corridor per se, but it is on the Young Street transit corridor. So I believe that it could be something that we could really see as something very different and something very good for that particular area. But of course, that will require a lot more public discussion as that sole application moves through our system. But just to end, I wanted to say, there's no question that we as a municipality and a region, we must do everything we can to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine and to protect the Greenbelt. It is essential to our future and our children's future, our grandchildren's future, and to the quality of our water. And if that doesn't get you thinking, nothing will. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, second round. Okay, okay. So All right, so I'll just make a few comments. As I said earlier, this is an area that is quite unique as well. It's unique for different reasons, and I think that the precision that we need to be coming up with this plan, it also exists, but it's in a different way than the local center, although there are some similarities. The environment I think is the building block, and it's the constraint in this area as opposed to the constraint that was in the local center area. But, there's no question that Oak Ridges is definitely a unique and different place within Richmond Hill. And I think that uniqueness is what makes us all as a community better, because it gives a variety of different environments and places that people can live and recreate and open a business and all that stuff. So I think that's something that we need with all of these plans, to protect what is good and maybe revitalize and redevelop what needs to be revitalized and redeveloped. And I think there is an opportunity in a lot of the kind of village core in Oak Ridges to redevelop some of the larger pieces of land that are presently largely parking lots and very car oriented. And I think that Oak Ridges will likely be car oriented to some degree, certainly more so than the southern part of Richmond Hill for a longer period of time. So I'm okay with that. And again, the whole idea of creating new spaces for businesses and new spaces for people to live, I think is really important. And I think we're doing the community a service by proposing a plan that will allow that kind of benefit to happen in the community. And as I said, I think the walkability, there will be more walkability when we implement a plan like this, but it's still not going to be the walkability that you'd get if you're downtown Toronto or even, the downtown Richmond Hill. I just had a question though. Can we put up the slide where it shows the plan and the plan area? The question that I have, and this is probably a complicated answer, and I don't need all of the answer, but maybe just a high level. I'm not naturally inclined to want to see the area north of Worthington included in this plan, because I don't think that it shares a great deal of commonality to the southern part of the plan area. But my thinking on this is that if by including it in the plan area, we're actually providing more definition and perhaps even more guardrails around what can be built there and what can't be. Because if it wasn't in the plan and development applications just came in on a not random, but on a one-off basis, then we wouldn't have the policy tools that we'd be able to rely on to say, no, we said this about that. Can I just have somebody comment? Is that generally the rationale that you would explain why we're putting that area in that? Because the reality is the land is developable. The reality is it's on a corridor, and the reality is we have applications in that area.
Yes, thank you so much for the question and comment. You're absolutely correct. Through this proposed OPA, it provides council with the policy direction for what's appropriate in this area. So if we get development applications in, or we have some currently in that area, the policies would serve as guidance for us to be able to evaluate those development proposals
on a more stringent set of policy guidelines. So we're talking about more details as opposed to remaining silent. And if it wasn't part of this designation, then there would be more things that could be open to interpretation. Is that correct?
Right. The proposed policy, the OPA, do provide those detailed policies specific to this area.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It does, though, allow higher heights and densities than what might be offered in the corridor if it was not in this designation.
Right. So currently those lands north of Black Forest, they're in the neighborhood designation, which along arterials allows for up to 4 stories. Through the OPA, we are proposing up to 6 stories in that area. So there is a little bit of an increase in height there.
Okay. So the trade-off is we're allowing a couple of extra stories, but we're also, we're giving more restrictions on what can and can't be built there. Okay, I want to have a further conversation with staff about that because I suspect that that's a bit more of a complex discussion than 5 minutes to 11 on a Tuesday night would allow. But I think that's an interesting point. My natural inclination is to not be in favor of wanting to have those lands in that designation, but I also understand the rationale for putting it in there, and there may actually be a net benefit to doing so. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, those are the only other comments I think I have. I mean, the environment has been talked about. I mean, I absolutely trust that we will be doing all that we can in Oak Ridges, especially to protect the environment and the rest of the community as well. But Oak Ridges does have a bit more of a fragility factor when it comes to the value of the moraine in terms of water. Okay, so I've got, sorry, Councillor, you want to make a final comment?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask staff, if we said 4 stories, that wouldn't just be this section of Yonge Street, right? It would be 4 stories for the entire Ward 1, the whole Oak Ridges area. Is that right?
So the height policies that we're proposing they would only apply to the local center designation. It wouldn't apply to the surrounding neighborhood designation.
So the surrounding neighborhoods would maintain the 4 stories that they already have. Okay. And the only other comment I wanted to say is that I really do think it's incumbent on us as local council and all levels of government to keep an eye on Oak Ridges and Oak Ridges Marine, because there has been an application in the last few months to take a section between Bayview and Leslie south of Bloomington and have it taken off the designation of Oak Ridges Marine. So nothing is assured in terms of protecting the environment. And I think we need to be diligent every single time. Thank you.
Yep, that's true. Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, we've got a motion before us to refer all these comments back to staff. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And the last item on the agenda is adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tree, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, thank you for those that waited. This is a bit of a later evening.